Welcome to another exciting episode of Submission Radio. It's January 26th. It's Australia Day here, guys, and we're going to serve you up a traditional Australian barbecue in the sense of guests. We have some delicious cuts of meat for you, Kaz. I don't think I've ever referred to guests as meat, but they are a piece of meat on this great day, this Australia Day. Who do we have in store? Who do we have on the menu for the people?
The shrimp on the barbie this week. We have none other than Jake Shields, Royce Gracie, Seth Petruzelli, and Chad Money Mendes. So it's a super show, if you like, a big episode of Submission Radio. And of course, we're going to be discussing and breaking down UFC on Fox 14. The event is in the bag. It was a big weekend of fights. A lot to talk about on the show this week.
That's right. I'm going to be a maid right now and do some housekeeping. Guys, if you still haven't, check us out on Twitter, Submission AUS, at Submission AUS. Check us out. Follow us. If you have any comments, feel free to tweet us, retweet us, communicate with us. We love chatting to the listeners. Also, the YouTube channel, youtube.com/Submission Radio AU. Lots of great stuff there. Interview with Pat Miletich, interviews with Bas Rutten, Judo, Gene LaBelle, if you missed it, and Don Fry. You know, he's got some crazy predictions and a story about Anderson Silva that you'll enjoy. So check that out. That's all up on the channel now. Lots of great stuff.
Yeah, tons and tons of content. Of course, if you're checking us out on YouTube and you want to listen to it more podcast style, you can. We do have online available platforms like Stitcher, iTunes, SoundCloud, pretty much all the options there. We've got a big show. We're going to cut right to it. I think it's time for our first guest. Dennis, let the people know who we've got.
Our next guest has for a long time been one of the top welterweights in the world, a former Strikeforce champion. He's coming off an impressive win over Brian Foster last weekend. Ladies and gentlemen, Jake Shields is in the building on Submission Radio. Jake, welcome to the show.
Thanks, man. Thanks. How you guys doing?
Yeah, we're doing really good. Good to have you on the program. Now, you know, it's been about a week removed from your impressive win over Brian. How do you feel about your performance? What kind of stands out to you about it?
I mean, overall, I'm happy. It was good. I made a few mistakes. There's never, it's rare things go perfect. I let him hit me once or twice at the beginning, but that kind of woke me up. So then I went, once I took him down, I was able to pass guard pretty easy, get him out, take back, and get the submission. So when you get a first-round submission, you can't be too bummed.
Yeah, absolutely. I'm surprised you're even picking yourself apart. It's been a couple of fights now since you've joined World Series of Fighting. Tell us, how do you enjoy being with the company?
So far, I love it. They treated me good. They seem to be growing really fast, and the company's moving in the right direction. It's been a great experience so far. I'm just ready to go out there and take their belt.
Yeah, absolutely. Touching on that, you were very successful in the UFC. Now in World Series of Fighting, you're currently undefeated. And, we're very confident that you may beat Rousimar Palhares for the title. Do you think there's anybody in World Series of Fighting in the welterweight division that could potentially beat you?
I mean, right now I'm only worried about Palhares. He's the only guy in my mind, so he's the most dangerous guy. And then after that, then once it's to him, I'll start looking at who the next contender would be. But I mean, I get a serious threat in front of me right now.
And everybody's excited about that fight. Before we break down the matchup, we just want to get your thoughts on Rousimar Palhares. What do you think of Palhares as a fighter?
As a fighter, I mean, he's phenomenal. He's really strong, explosive. Some of the best submissions in the game. I would say the best leg locks in all of fighting. So, dangerous guy.
Yeah, absolutely. I guess the biggest question is, obviously, you're an amazing grappler, American Jiu Jitsu represent. I want to get your opinion on this, Jake. In a matchup between you and Palhares, the biggest question that comes to mind is, do you worry at all about his leg locks? And do you think it's likely that he could potentially get you in a leg lock in a matchup against him?
I mean, yeah, anything's possible, to say, not going to worry about it impossible would be stupid of me, but I'm not particularly worried. I have great leg locks myself. I would love to go out there and try to leg lock him back. Usually he goes there with guys who don't know what they're doing, so he's playing someone that can attack him back. And he's a guy, he hurts people, and he goes out there mean, so I have the same mindset. If I get something, I'm going to try to break it against him.
I'm just wondering, in terms of the fight, let's say hypothetically something was to happen, he was to catch you on a leg lock, would you be worried at all that he might hold it a bit too long?
Oh yeah, definitely. He's going to try to break it, and that's something I'm aware of. So it's he's a dirty fighter. So when you fight someone like this, you got to get the mindset back that he's going out to try to hurt me. So I'm trying to hurt him.
And John Fitch is a guy that has a heavy grappling game and good wrestling like yourself. He didn't fare very well against Palhares. What did you think of that fight? And what do you think about a possible fight against Fitch in the future when you tenure in World Series of Fighting? Is that something you'd be interested in?
Yeah, with that fight, first off, Fitch looked good. Palhares capitalized on one mistake and took it and and popped his knee really bad. As far as fighting Fitch, I mean, Fitch is a guy I've had grappling matches with. I've trained a bunch of times. He's been a guy I've been looking at fighting for probably close to 10 years. So, of course, I'd love to fight Fitch. I think at this point, though, right now, I got to get through Palhares, and then hopefully Fitch wins a couple fights and gets back on track.
Yeah, if you do win, obviously, against Rousimar Palhares, that's another title to add to your, already large collection. How big would that be? What would that mean to you?
I mean, it's awesome. I already have, maybe 5 world titles, so it's nice to add another belt to that collection. It's always, I mean, at this point, I look at the fight more than the title, but of course, I mean, the title's an extra bonus.
Now, let's talk about your recent success. You've obviously gone 2 for 2. You've had some great first-round submission finishes. What do you attribute to, these early finishes that you're having lately in World Series of Fighting? Is there anything different that you're doing in training? Is there any changes that you've made in your life? What do you attribute it to?
A little bit, just trying to be more aggressive, when I'm training, I'm trying to go out there and in my mindset thinking don't let this guy survive. Try to get the submission in the first round in all my training sessions, so then that transfers over when I fight. So I'm going out there with the mindset of not allowing the fight to go through the second round. Not trying to pace myself, not trying to save anything, just trying to go out there and put the guys away right away.
Hey, and fans love it. At this point in your career, Jake, where you've competed for the biggest companies in the world, you've held many titles, you fought on the UFC's, one of UFC's biggest shows of all time, you've mixed it up with some of the biggest names across multiple divisions. What are your goals now, and why do you keep fighting?
Yeah, no, that's actually a really tough question. I mean, ultimately, I still just love the sport. I enjoy training. I enjoy being around it. I still enjoy competing. So my goal is I really just take it one fight at a time. Right now I started, I was feeling a little burnt out towards the end of my career with the UFC, just dealing with them and things that kind of got burnt out. And I was actually considering retiring towards the end there. I was in the right mind, and I decided to, to give another fight or two, and now I'm enjoying it again when the World Series of Fighting. So right now the only thing I'm worried about is trying to get through Palhares, and I'll really evaluate from there. I mean, I still healthy. I feel younger than I've ever felt, healthier than I've ever felt. So it's hard to say when I want to retire.
Yeah, don't leave yet, Jake. We love watching you fight. Now, another name out there in the welterweight division outside the UFC is Ben Askren. He's one of the elite guys out there in the world, and he's shown interest in fighting John Fitch and Palhares. We're not sure what his contract situation is like with ONE FC, but it seems like he'd be someone that you'd be interested in challenging and fighting, because he's another great guy in the welterweight division outside the UFC who has a great ground game. Would you be interested in taking on Ben at all if the opportunity presented itself in the future?
Yeah. Definitely, without a doubt. I'm a guy that's always looking for the big fights. I'm in it to test myself, and it's I want to fight the best. And Ben Askren is one of the best guys out there, so I'd love to fight him. I've actually had an opportunity to train with him he came out and trained with me for about a week a few years ago. So he's someone whose game I know, and I would love a chance to fight him.
Yeah, well, I mean, that's the thing, the big fights, and he's one of the biggest who obviously isn't in the UFC. I'm just wondering, obviously both of you guys are grapplers, different styles. How would you see that fight going?
I think it'd be a very high-paced, exciting fight, actually, because the way our styles mixed up, neither one of us would have a hard time controlling the others. There'd be lots of scrambling and action. I think it would be a good fight, but I see myself submitting him.
Now, Jake, one of your close friends and team members, Nick Diaz, is going to be potentially having the toughest fight of his career against Anderson Silva very, very soon. How involved are you in Nick's training going into this one? And, what do you see as some of Nick's strengths against Anderson in this matchup?
Nick's a phenomenal fighter. He's obviously his stand-up's really good. Where Anderson's good. I feel like Nick holds an advantage on the jiu-jitsu. Who knows if we'll get there? And then as far as how involved I've been, haven't been involved with Mike, so training myself in my own fight, but I've definitely trained with him some. I've been out there sparring with him, and I think he looks great. I think he's gonna go out there and shock a lot of people and pull out an upset.
Wow. I just want to also get your thoughts, in terms of this matchup. I think the thing that Nick's fans are worried about is Anderson taking advantage of Nick's boxing stance and kicking his lead leg, much like Dos Anjos did against Nate. Is that something that Nick's been preparing for? Is there any chance we may see Nick throwing kicks?
Yeah, no, he has. Nick does prefer boxing. There's no doubt about that. But he's brought in some really good kickboxers, guys like Joe Schilling and a few others to help train for this fight.
Absolutely. Now, one of the big questions, I guess, and we have to ask this, Jake, because fans are always hounding us about this whenever we mentioned you're coming on the show, is, the UFC, they're making it clear that they're bringing back lots of fighters to the company. If the opportunity in the future presented itself, would you be interested going back to the UFC, especially after Dana's comments saying that you're on the downswing of your career and you're never going to be the guy in the company?
Like I said before, right now I'm happy with the World Series of Fighting and taking it one fight at a time. But I'm certainly, I wouldn't say I wouldn't do that. You know, I'm beating the current UFC champ, and I think I'm on an upswing, not a downswing swing. So it would be kind of nice to go out there and take the title just to prove Dana wrong. Nothing personal against Dana, but it's always nice proving people wrong.
Yeah, absolutely. Now, speaking of the fans, Jake, we had a few fan questions sent in, so we're just going to ask you some of those. The Real McCoy wants to know, one of your most high-profile fights was against GSP. If you could have a rematch with George, what do you think you would have done differently? And do you still think about the fight sometimes?
Yeah, you know, I think that, you know, it was a really tough fight. I think if I'd do it differently, I would have went in there, you know, a little overwhelmed with how crazy the crowd was, like 60,000 Canadians screaming. So I was a little overwhelmed the first round or two. If I could do it over, I've been a little more aggressive. I ended up by the time the fight ended, I wasn't tired at all, and I wish I'd put a little more. So yeah, I would just come at him a little harder and, you know, take more shots, be more aggressive on my feet. And I think if I'd been really aggressive in his face, I think I could have worn him down and broke him a little bit.
Now, last fan question is from Tap Snapper Nap. He'd like to know, what are your thoughts about Robbie Lawler as the UFC champion? Do you think he'll be a long-term champion like GSP was in the division?
I like Robbie Lawler personally. I think he's a good fighter. I don't think he'll be a long-term champ like GSP. I mean, GSP came in so young, right at his had one of the best streaks of all time. So I'd be really surprised if Robbie Lawler can hold it that long. I think the division's so competitive, and these guys are going to take turns beating each other. But you never do know.
Yeah, we'll have to wait and see. Now, Jake, just to round things off, we're going to do something fun with you. It's called the Submission Radio Tap Out Round. We basically just throw a bunch of fun questions at you, and you answer with the first thing that comes to your mind. Are you ready?
Sure.
All right, give us the one meat dish that you miss the most.
Actually, I've never eaten meat. I've been vegetarian my whole life, so it's something I've never had to miss. It's been really easy.
There you go.
I've been fortunate there.
Wow. Now, Jake, what's your go-to grappling move in training?
Probably the guillotine choke. You know, I get guys that over and over. I love attacking the guillotine.
Yeah. Now,
a lot of different variations of it.
Now, Jake, give us the lowdown. What was it like being on Bully Beatdown, and did you have any idea who you'd have to fight beforehand?
No, they kept the guys separated from us, so we couldn't really see him. And it was a fun experience. You know, usually when we train for a fight, it's all serious, but we went out there and, you know, we'd be out partying the night before, drinking, not taking it serious, and then go in and smack these guys around a little bit.
Now, you have a 13-year-old daughter, Jake. What's the worst chick flick that you've had to go and watch in the cinema thus far?
Nothing too bad. I went and saw, she was me to some movie with singing. I can't remember what it was called, but it actually ended up being not that terrible. Some girls and some singing team. And
Pitch Perfect. Not that I watched that movie. Pitch Perfect. Yeah, I've never seen it, Jake. I've never seen it.
But it actually wasn't that terrible. I was like, oh my God, I can't believe I'm going to see this. But then it turned out being like, okay, that wasn't that bad.
I have no idea what movie you guys are talking about. Now, we read that growing up you enjoyed wild caving. Are we to understand that you are the Bear Grylls of MMA?
No, the what of MMA?
The Bear Grylls.
The Bear, what is that?
You know Bear Grylls, Man vs. Wild? That guy, he goes out and...
yeah, I've not seen the show. I've heard of that show. But yeah, no, I definitely grew up doing a lot of wild stuff. I grew up way out in the mountains of California in the middle of nowhere. And yeah, lots of mountain climbing, rock climbing. There was a bunch of wild caves up there. So me and my brother and some of my friends would wander in there and spend, you know, sometimes an entire day getting lost, exploring these caves. It was one of the things I look back at and be like, oh, I can't believe I did that. I could have so easily got lost or died in there. But luckily we made it. It makes fighting look tame.
Yeah.
Now, Jake, I want to get your statement on this because I read about it and I was dumbfounded. Now, when you won the Pan American Championships, which required wearing a gi as a purple belt, you said that you trained about 4 hours in the gi in your life at that point. Is that true? And how many hours have you trained in the gi now?
Yeah, that is true, and it's just, you know, I had a purple belt under Royce Gracie, and everyone, I was getting a lot of crap from Brazilians saying I wasn't a real purple belt, you know, because I never trained, and I just I felt like there wasn't a big difference between the gi and the no gi, so I put that on, went to Pan Ams and completely dominated everyone, you know, submitted everyone except in the finals. I went with the Brazilian national champ and beat him, I think, like 20 something to nothing, and it just proved a point that there wasn't a big difference between gi and no gi, and after then, you know. People, I mean, I got a little bit of crap about the no-gi training in the belt system, but people kind of mostly stopped after that.
Yes.
And now I've probably trained a total of 30, 40 hours in the gi in my life.
Wow.
Wow. Okay.
And
yeah.
I like the gi. There's nothing against it. I'm not like I don't have the gi versus no gi mentality. I think too many people with the gis are the one that have that attitude. They look at us like we're some kind of inferior jiu-jitsu, which I think is childish. I have lots of respect for the gi, and I would like to actually spend a lot of time and properly learn the gi, but I'm always so busy with MMA that I haven't really had the time to do that.
It's great to
So
hear.
I'm by no means against the gi. I just want to clarify that. Sometimes people think when you train no gi, it means you're anti-gi, which I'm not. I just don't think you have to train in the gi.
So there you go, guys. Jake Shields, open-minded, not against the gi. Now, I think this last question. It's early in 2015, Jake. You know, you had a big win. Tell us, what are Jake Shields' goals for 2015?
Oh man, I just win all my fights. Obviously, the Palhares fight's a big one. Win the World Series of Fighting title, and then from there, see what's next. I'd also like to do some more grappling tournaments. I hope we met him Marcel pan out again, or maybe Abu Dhabi or some more big submission tournaments.
Well, there you guys go now. Jake, make sure you don't do any crazy wild caving or anything like that. We don't want to see you injured, guys. You make sure you follow Jake on Twitter, Jake Shields, AJJ, I believe, and check out the information.
Yeah.
World Series of Fighting's next show, Morris versus Hill, World Series of Fighting 18 on the 12th of February at www.wsof.com. Jake, it's been a pleasure. We'll get you back on the show when the next big fight happens.
Great. Thanks a lot.
Hey, this is the Ultimate Fighter 17 winner, Kelvin Gastelum. You're listening to Submission Radio.
All right, guys, our next guest is an MMA veteran who has fought across Elite XC, Bellator, and the UFC. He is known as the Silverback and has been referred to as the Kimbo Killer. Seth Petruzelli, welcome to Submission Radio. How are you?
Hey, what's up, guys? I'm doing very well. How are you?
Really good, really good. It's a pleasure to have you on the show. Now, we want to get an update, Seth. You know, we haven't seen too much from you since your retirement from MMA in June of 2013. Tell us, what has the Silverback been up to?
Man, it's been that long? It doesn't feel like it's been that long. That's crazy. I mean, I'm still training, to be honest with you. All my training partners, everyone at my gym, say that they think I'm in the best shape I've ever been in, even when I was fighting. So I'm still busting my butt. I'm still training. I don't know what else to do. So I'm still in there twice a day doing what I would have done if I, would have fights coming up. So I guess it's just in me to keep training.
Yeah, well, we actually were stalking your Instagram, like a couple of people doing research, and we looked at... Yeah, no, it's good things. We looked at it, and you look like you're in phenomenal shape. We started thinking, like, Seth Petruzelli, like, are you doing personal training? Are you bodybuilding or something? What's going on? Why are you in such fantastic shape, and what do you attribute that to?
I mean, yeah, definitely my training, but I since I retired, I kind of changed my eating habits. I mean, when I walked, usually I walked around about 230 or so, and I cut to 205. But I was eating, I was eating healthy, but I was still eating my breads and grains and whole grains and wheat and oatmeal. And since I retired, I knew I wasn't going to be cutting for fights, and I kind of wanted to walk a little lighter and be a little more healthier. So I cut all the grains, cereals, rice, pasta, everything like that from my diet, and went pretty much strict paleo for the most part. And I'm walking around at like 15 pounds lighter, so I walk at like 208 or so.
Wow.
And I guess that's for my diet that I changed. That's helping.
Wow, no more Captain Crunch for the Silverback. Now, you had a long 13-year career, and, we're wondering, after such a long career and you've achieved so many great things, and we know you had a couple of tough losses right there near the end. Why did you decide to retire from MMA?
I mean, I guess it was a collection of things. T1, I've never been knocked out in my entire fight career, and that fight with King Mo kind of, I don't know if it not woke me up, but it just made me realize that, I got other great things going as far as in my two gyms and my commentating that I'm making very, very good money at, and real estate that I'm doing too. And I kind of want to be coherent when I'm older. I don't want to be slurring my words, and, so more health, I guess you could say, than anything. I retired. I mean, did I accomplish everything that I wanted to accomplish? No. Do I have any regrets about everything that I did? No, not at all. I mean, I wouldn't take back anything. Even my losses, everything was a learning experience and a memory that no one will ever take from me. But I guess what I could say, I didn't have the drive anymore. I didn't have the love for the sport anymore, and for health. I just wanted to be coherent when I was older, and I didn't want to be punch drunk, when I'm older. That kind of scares me. That stuff scares me a lot.
Yeah, for sure. And I think given that, given your lack of KO losses, I think that's really good. And obviously it's very respectable when you see guys like yourself, you walk away from the sport and you've got things like, your gyms and real estate and things like that. Looking back on your career, you fought for companies such as King of the Cage, BAMMA, the first ever WEC, Bellator, the UFC, and of course you're on the Ultimate Fighter. I mean, what do you make of such a big journey? You know what I mean? I was going to ask you, do you have any regrets? You obviously don't have any, but what do you think about such a big journey like that?
I mean, yeah, actually, you just haven't named them like that. I never really listed them all together like that and named them. That's kind of cool to hear that. I didn't realize, I forgot it was the first WEC, and yeah, that's when I fought Dan McGee, and that fight when Dan Turner was the main event for that fight back in the day. So it's great to see how the sport evolved from when I first started back in 2000 or in 99, 2000 to where it is today, just to see the transition of all the shows, how to run, the commissions, the people that come in and out of the sport. So it was just it's like a storybook that unfolded for those past 13, 14 years. And it was an amazing journey. I loved it. Loved every bit of it.
Absolutely. You should get Submission Radio to write your autobiography for you, Seth. We know everything about you now. Now, you were in the second season of The Ultimate Fighter. There's been over 20 seasons of the show now, so people pretty much know what to expect. But back then, it was still something very new. You know, what was the experience like for you, and what did you expect going into a show like that?
Oh, man, it was nerve-wracking. I mean, right after the show, all of us, when we're talking about 6 or 7 of us hung out, and we're like, will we do it again? Will we do this again? We're like, hell no, we wouldn't do that again. There's no way, because, 7 weeks locked in a house, no internet, TV, magazines, no contact with the outside world. It was, it was hell. But looking back at it now, I would do it again in a second. I mean, it was such a great experience. Like meeting all those people, I'm still in contact with a lot of them. Experiences that you can never take away, and all the learning that happened there with the sport. And it was great to see how it evolved from when I first started back in season 2 to where it is today. Just the difference, how smooth it runs now and how crazy it was back then.
Now, I want to talk about the big news with you, Seth. Obviously, the big news is Kimbo Slice is back in MMA and he's signed to Bellator, and he's called you and Tito out. Tito doesn't seem interested, but you, through an ice cream-related response on Instagram, seem to have accepted the fight. Something about Kimbo looking good. Are you interested in this
Kimbo
fight?
looking good.
Yeah, exactly. The MMA websites were deciphering. They had crack teams like, what does this all mean? We're wondering, are you interested in the fight, and is this the one that will bring you out of retirement?
Yeah, I mean, the tweet before that, I said, I heard that he called me out, and I said, look, if you want to call me out, I'm all for it. It's worth coming out of retirement to do it one more time. So, yeah, 100%. I tweeted that, I hashtag, with Bellator, and hopefully somebody saw that. And I actually emailed one of the guys from Bellator a couple of days ago saying, look, it's not a joke. If you guys need a fight, I'm there. I'll do it in a second. And to be honest with you, I think I've heard that over 100 people have contacted Bellator trying to get that fight. And he's been bombarded with people trying to take Kimbo as his first fight. So,
wow.
So I think it'll happen. Who knows? I mean, they might just want to give him a safe little, somebody to step up on to get a first win in Bellator. I mean, I don't know if they'd want to risk putting him with somebody that could actually do something to him the first fight.
Yeah.
But I'd be more than happy to fight him again.
It's interesting, Seth, because, Kimbo spoke about how it's a fight that he thinks about. What do you think about him calling you out for his return fight? And, do you think it's a dangerous move? You just mentioned, obviously, you knocked him out back in 2009. Do you think it's a dangerous move back on his part?
No, I mean, I guess if I was him, I would do the same thing. I mean, he's never had any other KO loss ever. So, I mean, why not call somebody out that he wants to avenge that loss to, I guess. I mean, it's a little disrespectful, I guess, because it makes me feel like, it was a fluke and it meant nothing, which of course people say. But, I mean, I think my actions speak, my fights speak for themselves. I mean, that's what I do. I love throwing hands and I love knocking people out. So if that's who he wants and that's what he wants to challenge himself with, then I'd be more than happy to oblige.
Well, let's go back to that moment. When he knocked Kimbo out in, I think it was about 14 seconds in Elite XC, sent a huge shockwave through MMA. So much happened from that. What was it like when you got in the back? Did you receive any backlash from the company, or what was it like? What was the first reactions when you went backstage?
Well, from him or his, I said this before, his posse and his gang and his crew were can I cuss on the station?
You can say whatever you want, absolutely.
Okay, they're dickheads, man. They were threatening my wife at the time. They were threatening my brother, like death threats, spitting at him. So they were just disgusting scumbags. But Kimbo himself was cool in the back room. He said, "Yo, dog, you gave me my first black eye. I ain't gonna take that away from you. Congratulations." Those were pretty much his exact words. And then he gave me a hug. So I mean, he was cool. When we went back to the hotel after the night of partying, I saw the owners and everybody sitting at the bar just getting hammered. So I don't know if they were drinking in despair, which I'm pretty sure that that's what they were doing.
Yeah.
They're depressed and like, oh God, what did we just do? So
Yeah.
that's pretty much all I got from them. And I went up to them and like, look, guys, I'm like, it was an honor to fight for you, and I just want to let you know, because at the time I didn't know that they were just going to go on and be bankrupt. But I was like, look, I'll carry the torch and I'll represent your company well and blah blah blah. And they're like, okay, good. And then 2 days later, that's it.
Oh, no.
Wow.
Seth, I guess the thing is, with Kimbo's streak in MMA, it was always surrounded with questions about fixing. And I mean, the big question is, did you get any impression or instruction from the Elite XC organizers going into the fight that they'd like you to take some kind of dive for Kimbo before the fight?
No, honestly, the only thing that was said to me was, look, we're going to offer you a knockout bonus. We want this fight to be exciting. How's a knockout bonus sound? I'm like, all right, yeah, I'll take a knockout bonus. That's fine. So, no, they didn't come right out and say anything like that. But, I mean, when you offer somebody a knockout bonus, I mean, I'm going to definitely try to take it and stand up and fight for sure.
And I mean, obviously, after the fight, you were happy to carry the company and be the guy. You had no idea of the ramifications that that knockout would happen, did you?
No, obviously not. No, I mean, and to be honest with you, I've heard tons of rumors from reputable sources that they were millions in debt before I even landed that punch. So I mean, did I have something to do with it? Of course, I did. But I mean, it's their own, mishandling of funds that sunk the company. That had nothing to do with me.
Let's talk about this potential matchup that might happen. So, you just mentioned that you're interested in potentially coming out of retirement and fighting Kimbo. The first fight was quite short and brief. Kimbo's been out of MMA himself for quite a long time now. How would you see a rematch go between you two in Bellator? How would you see that match play out?
To be honest with you, just so there's no, misclarifications this time when I fight him, I mean, I'd love to stand up and bang with him, but, I mean, how great would it be to get my first KO victory against him the first time and then get a submission victory against him the second time? That way I can just be all around better than him, which I know I can submit him, on the ground for sure. So, I mean, I would love to just to stand up with him, tire him out first round, and then take him down and just try to work for a submission in the second round. So my ultimate goal would be to submit him.
Yeah, absolutely. You've had the KO, the submission, that's 2 for 2. Kimbo, like Dennis was saying, he hasn't fought in the sport of MMA for 5 years, and your last fight was less than 2 years ago, so you'd seem like the fresher guy. How would you feel about getting back in the cage, physically? Would there be any issues with preparing? I mean, you sound like you're in good shape.
Yeah, I'm in fine shape. I mean, the only issue would be ring rust, but, I mean, I'm training all my guys at the gym now for the past, since I retired, so I've had amateurs, pros coming out of my gym, and I'm training them for their fights, so it's the only weird thing would be in front of the crowd again, but I mean, I've been doing grappling tournaments and stuff like that in front of crowds now for the past 2 years anyway, so I don't think there'd be any problem with it at all. My cardio is phenomenal. My skill is still exactly the same, and I mean, I feel great. Honestly, the only issue would be the weight, because right now I'm walking at like 206, 207, and I'm sure he's about 230, 240. So that would be the only issue. But last time I fought him, I was 205, and he was 230 as well. So it's whatever.
Now, Seth, obviously you spoke about why you decided to retire, and assuming that this fight does get made in Bellator, and I mean, this is, we're just talking about possibilities here. Obviously, Bellator is a different company to what it was when you fought in 2013 with Scott Coker behind it. Would there be any opportunity for you, or would you be interested at all if you did get another win over Kimbo, to stick around and maybe get some kind of fight deal done for a couple more fights?
Nah, I think I would knock him out, stand in the middle of the cage, and then, drop the... Well, if there was a trophy or something cool, I could just drop and be like, I'm out. Peace out.
Drop the mic. Drop the post mic.
Drop the mic and be like, peace out. I'm out again, guys. See ya. Honestly, I've always itched. I mean, it's always there. The drive to compete, the drive to be in front of a crowd and to show my skills have been with me since I retired, and it's hard to not do that. It's real hard not to do that. I mean, to take fights and just to go do it. So who knows? I mean, if this fight ever does potentially happen, who knows how I'd feel at that time. I mean, I would definitely be open to the option to fight again, but you never know.
I think that's almost a shame because you sound like, you're working on your grappling a lot, and we could see an even more dangerous Seth Petruzelli, on the ground. If the UFC called you, tomorrow or after this, hypothetical Kimbo fight and was like, Seth, we want you back, what would your answer be?
I would say, can you give me a day to think about it, guys? I don't know, man. That's a heavy question. One, it would be what weight? Because right now I'm walking at 206, 207. So would I cut to 85? I mean, I haven't been under 200 pounds since I was 13 years old. So that's a question I'd have to wonder too. Is what weight would they want me at?
Yeah. Now I've been wanting to ask you something for a while. I want to talk about some of these habits that you've got, Seth. A few years ago we saw you dressed up as Kimbo Slice for Halloween. I want to know, what was the motivation behind it, and did you hear anything from Kimbo about that dress up?
No. The only thing that happened to me that night was, I don't even know why I did it. I just thought it would be funny because it was only like 2 or 3 weeks after the fight, and I really didn't think dressing up in blackface was that racist, but apparently it was, which I apologize for. But the only thing that happened that night, we went downtown Orlando, and I went out, and it was just as I knocked Kimbo out, so nobody knew it was me. So everyone was just talking trash to me the whole night, just like, you suck, Kimbo, what are you doing, you suck. I'm like, oh, man, this is horrible. So I literally an hour of getting berated as Kimbo on Halloween. So I walked home, and it was about a mile walk home to my house. So as I'm walking home, I hear, Kimbo, you suck. And I look up, and there's a damn milkshake flying out of the window, hits me, explodes all over me, and the guy in the car drives off. I'm like, you gotta be shitting me, dude. Really?
Oh,
so,
my God.
yeah, I got a milkshake thrown at me from a car as Kimbo, saying that I suck, walking home that night. So it wasn't worth it at all. I never heard anything from Kimbo about it either.
That's probably why Kimbo's always so serious. He has a rough run at life. People probably do that to him every day. Now,
imagine if people just walk around and throw crap at Kimbo all day. That would suck.
Yeah, if Kimbo goes, you should walk a mile in my shoes. You should say, yeah, I haven't. I've gotten a milkshake thrown at my head. Now, you also dressed up as Blanca from Street Fighter this past Halloween, and having the past years had amazing dress ups like Thundercats and a truly amazing Venom from Spider-Man. What is it about Halloween that makes you go all out, and which dress up was your favorite?
Man. See, that 2 years ago was Panther, or 2 years ago was Venom, 3 years ago was Blanca. I like Panther a lot, to be honest with you. But then this last one, I don't know if you guys saw this last one, was a Creature from the Black Lagoon. Did you guys see that one?
We didn't see it, no. We'll have to throw that one up.
That was a real good one. The Creature from the Black Lagoon was good. So my girlfriend dressed up as like the damsel in distress. So it was like a classic monster type theme. But I really like Venom. I'm into comics and stuff like that. So the Venom was pretty cool. I like Venom a lot.
Yeah, that one was awesome. For those who haven't seen it, we'll throw it up. But, obviously Venom's massive mouth was all over your neck. It looked crazy. Now, we want to talk about your gym, obviously Jungle MMA and Fitness. What was the inspiration behind opening that up? And tell us a little bit about the facility.
Right after I was on season 2 of The Ultimate Fighter, I opened up Knockout Fitness. It was my first gym. I had that for a couple of years. And then was affiliated with American Top Team, which kind of went south. Not a fan of them right now. Well, not now. Now I'm fine, but back then it was a big issue. And opened up the Jungle MMA Fitness right after the Kimbo fight, just because I knew, I had all this money. I can't just blow it like most idiots do. So I wanted to reinvest it, put all that money into opening the gym, getting everything set with that. So it was pretty much just an investment idea. I knew that I had a lot of great trainers and friends and fighters around me. Tom Waller, Mike Lee, who opened the gym with me. So I knew we could have a great facility in Orlando. And right now, 6 or 7 years later, it's amazing. We have over 400 members, 2 locations. So it's been great.
Yeah, absolutely. It looks like a great facility. Everyone needs to check it out when they travel down there. Now, Seth, we're going to do a fun little thing with you. We call it the Submission Radio Tap Out Round. It's a bunch of fun questions. You answer with the first thing that comes to mind, sort of like word association. Are you ready?
Ooh, yeah.
Okay, here we go. You fought in so many companies. Which one has been your favorite one to fight for?
I don't want to piss people off. That's the first thing that comes to mind. In PC. UFC, obviously, they're amazing, but when I was with Bellator, they treated me the best, to be honest with you.
Oh. Name one of your fights that fans have not seen and need to YouTube right now.
Oh, they've probably seen the Bob Sapp one, but Dan Severn was my personal favorite just because it was such a big accomplishment. It was the first big name that I've ever beaten. So, Proclivity Cage, Dan Severn back in the day, I think 2004, 2005.
YouTube it now, guys. Now, apart from running your gym, you know, what's a secret hobby that Seth has that fans may not know about?
Well, it wouldn't be a secret then, would it?
Well, it's not going to be after you tell us.
Yeah, that's true. Man, I love animals going to the dog. I love my dogs. I take my dogs to the dog park like all the time. I'm a big advocate of like adopting for animals instead of buying from breeders and stuff like that. So I give donations to the local animal shelters all the time. So that's kind of like a passion of mine that I have. If I wasn't fighting, I'd be getting a lot more involved with that.
I feel like there's going to be memes of you now, Seth, like nice guy Seth memes.
That's the PETA man.
Yeah. Best story from being on the Ultimate Fighter 2 that we didn't see on TV?
Oh, man. Guys, you have no idea. There were so many good ones. One good one in particular, Rashad. Everyone knows Rashad Evans, obviously. There was a cone, like, you know, one of the hazard cones that are out in the street, the orange cones.
Yeah.
I jumped out of a van. They took us to transport us in vans. So I jumped out of a van, grabbed one of them, got yelled at, of course, but hit it in the back. Didn't get rid of it. They told me to get rid of it, but I didn't. Went into the house. I wrapped it in paper towels and draped like a kind of a hood over it and put 2 holes in it, so it looked like a KKK hat.
Oh wow!
And I put it in Rashad's bed. So we'd go in there and see it.
I wonder why that wasn't on TV. What was Rashad's reaction?
He was like, "Oh hell no, man! Really, guys?" He laughed it off. He was funny. Like we all got close. All the heavyweights, especially, got super close really fast. So we all joked with each other, messed around and stuff like that.
Classic Rashad reaction. Now, you're a third-degree black belt, and I'm going to butcher this, and I'm really sorry about this, Seth, but it's called Shito Ryu Karate. What is...
Shito.
Okay, that's it. I'm not going to even try and repeat it because I can barely speak English. What is this? What is this type of karate? I've never heard of it before.
It's one of the 4 main styles of karate. There's Shotokan, Ishinryu, Shito-ryu, Wado-ryu. It's almost just like Machido's style of karate, Shotokan. It's pretty much the exact same style, just kind of branched off a little different lineage and whatnot. So, but yeah, it's a strong style. It's a traditional, obviously, style of karate. Started when I was 6 years old, and you know, to this day, I still go in the back room of my gym when no one's looking and practice my kata sometimes. That I know everyone would laugh at me.
Is that what you do in the back room of the gym? We've been getting emails about
it. the number one.
But the trick is doing it naked and letting Ken don't know how to do it. So.
Hey man, it wouldn't be a kata if you weren't naked. Now, Seth, what are your thoughts on Ken Shamrock having a bare knuckle fight?
I couldn't believe he was going to do that, man. That's kind of crazy. Now, I heard Ken Shamrock called him out, too, which is kind of nuts. And on a side note, there might be something working with me and Ken, because I was supposed to fight Ken on 3 different occasions, and the fights fell through every time. 2 of the organizations, like, didn't happen at all. Like, none of the fights happened, and one time he got hurt or something like that. So I'd be interested to see if I've heard through the grapevine that there's some people looking at getting me and Ken to fight as well. So I said I would come out of retirement for Ken Shamrock as well, because we were supposed to fight so many damn times.
Yeah, you guys have a funny relationship as well, because I believe you replaced Ken when you fought Kimbo, didn't you?
Yep. Yeah.
And then you guys are supposed to fight. This is like a rivalry, and you guys have been here and there. I would love the fight. So you're saying that you'd be interested in coming out of retirement to fight Ken?
Yeah, for sure. Just because it was supposed to happen so many times and it never did, and it was such a letdown because he was obviously such a big name, and I had respect for him growing up, seeing him when I was a little kid, you know, on the first UFC. So it's great to fight legends like that, you know.
Yeah, it's awesome, and you know, this isn't in the tap out round, but how do you foresee a fight between you two going?
You know, his face would be pretty. I see his face looking like an elephant again, like when he fought. When was that? Was it a Tito fight that he looked really bad? Like I would beat him up pretty bad.
Oh wow! Now we're wondering, you know, what was it like stepping in the ring with Bob Sapp, especially back in 2004?
Oh man, it was that was a crazy time in Japan, man. It was I met him. He was super nice, super quiet guy. shook my hand, and he had the lightest handshake ever, was real soft-spoken. But then, got in the ring, and he was just this giant beast. He was 6'7", 370 when I fought him.
Wow. Oh my God.
Just a monster. So, but the fight obviously went how it happened. I mean, I felt real confident going in against him. I didn't care how big he was. I mean, I knew I had the speed, and I knew I was strong enough to knock him out. I don't know if you guys know what happened. You saw it, I'm sure, but it was a sting. I thought I pulled my bicep. That's why I started screaming at my arm. But it was just a sting. I threw my right so far past his head, and I turned my neck the opposite direction that it literally felt like I had no arm. It was the craziest feeling ever. It was just a sting. And
wow.
Doctor called the fight after that, obviously. So, but it was still an amazing experience. And Japan, I've always wanted to fight in Japan, and I'd love to go back there again. I've been there like four times or so for fights. So, it's a great place. And Bob Sappa's a cool guy too.
Yeah, Bob's
weird, but a cool guy.
Yeah, Bob's an amazing guy. He was on our show once, and he's such a great promoter. Now, serious question, Seth. You've been getting dressed up in all these costumes, so the fans want to know, what are you? Are you a DC or are you a Marvel guy? Which one are you?
Definitely Marvel. They have more.
No.
There's way more. Sorry.
What are you doing to me and Casper here?
I mean, as far as DC, I mean, I love Superman. Superman, I love. I mean, I love the story behind them, everything like that. I've always said I want to name my first son Kal-El because I love that name. But that's like the only person from DC that I really can get into, I guess you can say. But Marvel, there's just so many.
Before you upset Dennis anymore, are you forgetting? Are you forgetting Batman by any chance?
I like Batman, but I don't want to piss somebody off now. I feel bad. I just feel like he's just a rich guy. He's just a regular rich guy. I don't know. I don't know. I can't get into. I like Batman, but I'm not into him. He just doesn't do it for me, I guess you can say. Sorry.
Oh, man. Batman's somewhere right now listening, turning off the program as we speak. There's going to be headlines all over bloody elbow right now. It'll be like, Seth hates Batman. Potential fight to be set up soon.
He's not listening where I'm at. He's come get me, I guess.
Yeah. We had John Kavanagh on, I think, a couple of weeks ago, and he was also saying how he was a Marvel guy. He prefers Spider-Man, and he was saying how, Batman doesn't do any MMA. But there is one thing. I will say, though, that, and I didn't say this to John, so I'm going to say this to you now, Seth. In one of the movies, it was The Dark Knight Returns, I think, part 1. Batman's beating on a guy, and he actually puts him in arm bars and knee bars. So there you go. Ever since then, we've loved Batman even more.
I need to rewatch that. If he does that, I'll have a little bit more respect for him since he trained with MMA. But as far as the ninjutsu, it's ninja that he trained. I mean, pretty much, right? I mean, the dark, whatever that the shadow arts,
the League of Shadows. Yeah.
I mean, essentially that's ninjutsu. So I mean, I don't know. Just doesn't do it.
It's what we do, Seth. We spread the good word of Batman and get people to respect him. Now, finally, let's assume this fight with Kimbo does happen. What's the official prediction? How are you beating Kimbo how are you beating Kimbo in the rematch?
I'm always looking for the knockout. Of course, I will 100% stand and bang with him. And if worse comes to worst, but I don't think it will. I always have my jiu-jitsu. I'd love to take him down, and like I said, I'd love to get a submission victory on him in the second round.
Well, there you guys go. And you can check out Seth on Twitter at Silverback Seth. And if you're visiting Orlando or Lake Mary, check out Jungle MMA and Fitness. You can find out all the details at www.jungleorlando.com. Seth, it's been an absolute pleasure having you on the program. I think it's safe to say we're excited to see who you fight, Ken Shamrock or Kimbo Slice. Needless to say, it's going to be an exciting year in MMA, and we're excited that you may be a part of it in 2015.
Cool. I really appreciate it, guys. This is my first interview since coming back into the MMA not spotlight, but back into the game and stuff like that. So I appreciate you guys having me on.
Oh, it's been our pleasure. And of course, guys, don't forget to check out Seth's Instagram, Silverback Seth for real. Tons of funny stuff, funny pictures, and around Halloween, that's the place to be. So it was our pleasure.
Or my birthday.
Or Seth's birthday. Yeah.
There's good spankings on my birthday. Don't judge me.
We love a good spanking.
Hey, I'm Phil, Mr. Wonderful Davis. You're listening to Submission Radio. Stay tuned or I'll snap your arms off.
All right, guys. Our next guest's amazing war with Jose Aldo was officially voted ESPN's and Bloody Elbows 2014 Fight of the Year. He is now fighting Ricardo Lamas on April 4th, UFC Fight Night 63. Ched Money Mendes, welcome back to Submission Radio.
Yes, guys. Thanks for having me.
Oh, it's a pleasure. It's always great to have you back on the show. Now, we haven't heard a whole lot from you since you fight against Jose Aldo. Tell the fans, what has Chad Mendes been up to, and how's 2015 treating you so far?
Man, I just took a little bit of time off. I was doing a lot of hunting, fishing, hanging out with the family. But just, getting back into training now and getting ready for the fight with Lamas. So it was a nice time to, kind of get out of the gym. I feel like I trained so much for that fight. Basically went through 2 camps in a row, with the injury and everything. So, it felt great to be able to step out of the gym for a little bit and get a little bit of vacation. So.
Absolutely. And, just touching on that fight, we were rewatching that fight the other day. It was a fantastic fight. And, you were pumped and smiling throughout most of the fight with Aldo and afterwards as well. Was that the most fun you've ever had during a fight, Chad, in recent times, your fight with Jose Aldo?
Yeah, man, it was a, pretty cool experience. Like I said, I felt like I was so prepared, so ready for that fight. And, it was a lot of fun to get in there and actually get it done. So, didn't get the W, but all in all, I feel like I, learned so much about myself as a fighter and, proved a lot to myself and I think the world as well. And, it just felt good, man. It's something I'm going to remember for the rest of my life, that's for sure.
It's interesting you say that. Well, you say you learned a lot of things about yourself. What are some of those things? What did you learn?
I mean, although I think in my opinion is pound for pound best fighter, so getting in there and fighting a guy that, that caliber, getting in there and, I felt like I did more damage and, kind of beat him up a little bit. It felt good to, find that out, I guess you can say. I've been a wrestler my whole life and, been working a lot on my stand-up. I'm the only guy to ever drop him, stand-up wise. And just, like I said, I feel like it kind of helped my confidence a lot as far as, my all-around game. So, all in all, it was good to just kind of get in there and let loose.
Absolutely. And it's great to see, how much fun you had during the fight. Obviously, with this fight with Ricardo Lamas, your goal is to get another crack at Jose Aldo. If you did have another matchup with him, what do you think would be one thing that you would have done differently?
Honestly, I feel like there's a couple things that, change in this fight and I win the fight. I think, not getting dropped in the first round, and the 2 punches after the bell, messed me up pretty good. And so pretty much every other hit that I would take to the head after that would pretty much rock me. And so I think, taking that kind of stuff away, the fight's a little bit different. Probably mix up a little more wrestling as well. But, like I said, all in all, I think a couple things just, change. Small things change in that fight, and I win.
Yeah. Now, going to that fight, a lot of people picked you to beat Jose. I'm just wondering, what was that like, and did that put any extra pressure on you?
No, not at all. I mean, this is my job. This is what we, train for. This is what we do. So, as far as fans and people, wanting me to win or expecting me to win, that's just all part of the job. So, it definitely doesn't add any extra pressure. If anything, it just kind of helps. I love having the fans back me up and, truly believe in me. And, I think it kind of helps the confidence. So, it definitely doesn't hurt.
Now, one thing that was apparent in the fight was Aldo's height. You've said in past interviews you're not the biggest of featherweights. Chad, have you ever or would you ever consider dropping down to bantamweight in the future?
Possibly, yeah. I definitely don't cut much weight. My weight cutting, is pretty on point. I've been doing it for a long time, so I kind of, know what my body can and can't do just through wrestling. But I could definitely make 35. But right now TJ's a champ, and he's got his reign, so definitely not stepping in and gonna try to get in there and fight TJ or anything like that. So we'll see down the line, though. I got a few years left to get in here and keep fighting. So hopefully my body's willing. Would like to keep fighting for another 5 or 6 years plus. So we got some time, hopefully.
So just to clarify, Chad, because I'm interested in that, is also, if TJ Dillashaw and Uriah Faber weren't in the bantamweight division, do you think, it would be safe to assume that you'd be more likely to go into it sooner or could have tried out bantamweight already, but it's possibly because that, your teammates are in the division that you've sort of stayed out of it thus far?
Yeah, I mean, as far as that goes, I mean, I think it's the teammates. We have guys that came out from Mel that are, at the top of so many different weight classes, and we kind of all have our places, and we know that, and like I said, TJ's the champ at 35. My only loss is to Jose Aldo, and like I said, I think I changed a couple things and I beat him. I become the champ at 45. So, I don't think anything's broken. I'm not trying to fix anything as far as moving around, but I love where I'm at. 45 is my home right now, and I feel very comfortable with the weight cut. I feel good with how my body is, and being able to train throughout a camp and not have to worry about killing myself by starving and dehydrating the entire time. So, I could just focus so much more on getting better every camp. And I think in my opinion, that's more important than just trying to be a little bit bigger than an opponent. And I've always kind of had a strength advantage anyway. So it's, I think that's what kind of helps. But, yeah, I mean, right now 45 is definitely where I'm at.
Yeah, of course. And if you went to bantamweight, of course, you wouldn't really have room for Tim Tams in the diet, so that'd be a big shame. Speaking of TJ Dillashaw, he was on our show just recently, and he said that he'd love to fight Jose Aldo. TJ also pointed out a few advantages he would have over Aldo. Having fought Aldo twice, and given that you train regularly with TJ, how do you think TJ stacks up against Aldo, and what do you think his chances would be against the featherweight champ?
Yeah, I mean, I think TJ's style, just like, we saw the fight with Burrell, I think his style matches up great for Aldo and Burrell. I mean, for TJ anyway. I think TJ would have to put on a little bit of size. Aldo's quite a bit bigger than he is. And so I think that would be something he'd have to focus on. But, if he could pack on the size and keep the cardio gas tank, obviously with the same technique, I think it would be a rough night for Aldo. So, that's definitely a fight that I'm sure a lot of people would love to see, myself included. But yeah, I think he would do great.
Chad, let's talk about your upcoming fight with Ricardo Lamas. This is something we're very excited about. You called Ricardo out a while ago. Why do you think it took such a long time for the fight to be made official?
Yeah, so I called him out right after his win. That was a big win for him against Dennis Bermudez. So I think ultimately it's, me, Lamas, Frankie, now Connor, and then Aldo. Those are the core top guys. And, coming off a win like that, it just felt like it would make sense for a guy like him and me to fight. So I called him out. Ultimately I have no idea why it took so long. Maybe, the UFC was just trying to figure out which cards people were going to be on and ultimately figure out who was going to fight who. But, yeah, we got it done. This is the fight that I wanted. I don't have anything negative to say about Ricardo. I think he's a solid fighter. Seems like a cool enough dude. This is a fight that, it's just one more fight to get me that much closer to the title shot again. So, like I said, I feel like he's deserving. He's in the top, and I got to beat a guy like this to get right back in there. So, it's that time.
And I think, it's an exciting fight, much like we saw Gustafsson and Johnson this past weekend. It's one of those fights where two elite guys at the top, there may be a title shot coming after this. You guys are somewhat similar in the sense that you're both wrestlers with dangerous striking. What do you think you do better than Ricardo?
I think ultimately I'm just more athletic. My wrestling is just the pedigree is higher than his. I think he does a great job of mixing it up with his striking and his wrestling. And there's a few things that I'm going to focus on with a guy like Ricardo. Obviously not going to talk about it now, but, I think ultimately our styles match up for a pretty exciting fight. I'm a heavy hitter. I like to get in there and bang, but can mix it up with the wrestling as well, just like he can. So, when you get two guys like that, it could be a very close fight. And, sometimes those are the most exciting ones. So, I'm excited for it.
Absolutely, Chad. Without giving away any of your game plan, Ricardo's so talented. What's one area that you think he's most dangerous in, going into this fight in your mind?
ultimately, I think his most dangerous spot is on top, you know, and I don't get taken down very much in any of my fights. So, you know, I think that's, you know, I think that's a bad matchup for him as far as, you know, his strongest point is probably one of my strongest defenses. So, you know, I think ultimately that benefits me a lot more. And, you know, his striking's decent. I don't see anything great. You know, he seems like he's got some power in his jab hand. Obviously, you guys saw what he did with Bermudez, but, you know, I feel like I have the speed advantage and the power advantage. So, you know, all in all, I feel like anywhere this fight is, I feel like I'm pretty much the better fighter. So, you know, I think this is a great matchup. This is one of the reasons why I called him out, obviously. You know, he's a big name. This is, you know, a huge stepping stone to get right back in there to that title.
Ricardo made a hilarious video recently mocking Conor McGregor. I'm guessing you saw it by your reaction. He says he wants to get his personality out there more. First of all, what did you think of the video? And are you worried at all that we're going to see a Chad Mendes parody soon from Ricardo?
Nah, I mean, that I thought that shit was hilarious. I actually retweeted it and posted it out there just because it was so damn funny.
Yeah.
You know, like I said, I don't have anything negative to say about Ricardo. I mean, I thought that was hilarious. You know, that's they spent a lot of time on that, and I thought it was pretty cool. But yeah, I mean, I don't think I'm going to see anything about me. I mean, it is what it is, whether if he wants to do it or not. But no, I thought that was funny.
Now, you know, we compared your matchup, you and Ricardo, to Johnson and Gustafsson because, you know, really it is the elite fighting the elite in the division. If you do beat Ricardo, you know, how long do you think till you get another title shot? Obviously, your fight with Aldo was the best fight of 2014. You know, how many more fights do you think after Ricardo do you need to fight till you get that title shot again?
I mean, you know, I was talking about this the other day. I mean, ultimately, like I said, it's, you know, me, Ricardo, we got Frankie, now Conor, and Aldo. You know, it just wouldn't, you know, if I beat Ricardo, you know, I could possibly see maybe Frankie if he's not already fighting for the title. But, I mean, ultimately, I don't see anybody else other than Conor, whether he wins or loses this fight, that I would fight to, you know, that would make sense. I would either be taking a step back in competition or be fighting for the title soon. So I could see this fight, if I win this fight, maybe one other one possibly, and then back to the title. Could even possibly see winning this fight in spectacular fashion and holding off and fighting for the title next. So, I mean, ultimately that's up to the UFC, but in my mind, you know, there's only a couple things that really make sense.
Now, you mentioned Conor McGregor, and he's obviously the next man to get the crack at Jose Aldo. When you were on our show last time, this is a while ago, you mentioned that you weren't exactly his biggest fan, that he was a lot of talk. This is around the time that the Cole Miller fight was supposed to happen. We have to ask, you know, what's your opinion of the guy now, and has it changed at all?
You know, people ask this all the time. You know, this is a guy that's made, you know, a huge splash in the division. You know, ultimately, he's not my favorite guy, but, you know, when it comes down to it, he's doing everything he needs to do. I mean, he's, you know, beaten every person that the UFC's put in front of him. You know, it's not his fault. He's not facing any wrestlers or any, you know, guys that are really going to test him. He's, you know, stepping in there every single time and doing what he's saying. So, the guy talks a big talk, but he's backing it up thus far. You know, I'd really like to see him get in there and actually fight, you know, one of us, you know, wrestlers or guys that are in the top 3 before he gets the title shot. But, you know, it is what it is. The guy's got a huge following. UFC, you know, is going to make a lot of money off this title shot, and that's what it ultimately comes down to. So, you know, as much as I want to hate the guy, you know, this is a business. He's doing what he needs to do, and he's making money. So, you know, that's basically bottom line.
Yeah, that's very true, Chad. He is converting a lot of people with each fight. Just wondering, were you impressed at all with his performance against Dennis Siver?
I mean, I feel like that was the same Conor we've seen every single time. I mean, I haven't seen any major improvements or anything, but, you know, in my opinion, you know, I don't think Siver was the test that he needed to get in there and fight for the title next. You know, in my opinion, Siver, you know, is top 15. You know, I don't think he's top 10 or top 5 by any means, but, you know, it is what it is. Like I said, the UFC is doing this. They need him fighting for that title. So that's what's next.
And the last question before we get off, Connor, you've obviously been in there with Jose Aldo twice. Do you think he'll be able to dethrone the champ?
No, I don't think so. I mean, this is the thing. A lot of people forget that Aldo, he's a black belt in jiu-jitsu, but also, we've seen him blast double guys. He can wrestle. He can take people down. He's athletic enough to where he can adapt and do those types of things. You get a guy like Connor where, I think Aldo's going to be faster than he is. We saw Connor get tripped a few times by Seaver's, short little leg kicks. With Aldo's speed and power, he's going to chop those legs down. And if for whatever reason he's getting tagged up at all on the feet, I could see him blast doubling, taking this dude down, and just staying on top of him. We've seen him do it in other fights with other elite strikers. So, I think that's always a possibility. I don't think Connor's going to beat Aldo, no.
Do you think, Chad, do you think mentally this is going to be a tough test for Aldo? I mean, thus far, he looks like he's just laughing in Connor's face. But, you were in Brazil with him in a stare down where he pushed you. Do you think it's sort of easy to get in Aldo's head going into a matchup?
Yeah, before all that stuff with me and Aldo, we've never seen Aldo react or act like that at all. So, I think that was kind of the first time anyone's really got into his head. And you got to see what happened, but I feel like that was kind of a warm-up for him with this dude. This is going to be a completely different level as far as mind games go. We'll see how he acts to it. I think Aldo, he's a champion. He's got the champion mentality. He's been a champion for a long time. So I highly doubt that he's going to let something like that get in his head and really affect how he performs. But ultimately, I don't really know the guy, so I don't know. But instincts go with, he's the champ for a reason, and he's, not going to let mind games control how his performance is. So.
Now, Chad, before we finish up the interview, we're just going to do something fun with you. It's called the Submission Raider Tap Out Round. I'm sure you remember a bunch of fun questions, and I answer with the first thing that comes to your mind. Are you ready?
Yep.
All right, Ben. What is the best pizza place in Sacramento?
I'm not even a big pizza guy, honestly. You guys are Feely for that. Sorry.
Oh, man.
I don't eat a lot of pizza.
Oh, no. A lot of Chad Mendes fans right now are turning up the radio, Chad, but that's all right. It's okay. It's okay.
Sorry, guys.
Because we're about to find out another level of Chad Mendes. Because, Chad, what was the first music album that you've ever bought?
Garth Brooks from a yard sale down the road.
There you go. Jordan or Kobe?
Jordan.
Hardest meal to stay away from during training?
Sushi.
Now, how much money has Martin Kampman won off you in poker thus far?
I don't play poker. He hasn't stolen any of my money.
Yeah, he'll get you in there. He'll slyly get you playing. Oh yeah.
He's tried a little bit already. Not quite yet.
Using his Jedi mind tricks. Now, you had the fight of 2014, but what was the movie of the year in 2014 for Chad Mendes?
What was the what? Sorry, phone cut out.
The movie of the year.
Movie of the year? Of 2014? Frozen.
Oh.
I would have gone with Pitch Perfect myself, but all right.
Chad, mustache, goatee, or beard?
Mustache for sure.
See, I think you'd look good with a goatee. Now, what's the Chad Mendes signature meal in the kitchen? You invite Submission Radio over to your house. What's the signature meal you're cooking up?
I eat a lot of wild game, so my favorite is ground elk spaghetti. So you put the ground meat in the sauce, so meat sauce, but ground elk is unbelievable.
Oh, nice. We'll be over next week. Chad, has Chad Mendes ever Googled himself, and what's the weirdest thing you've ever found?
Oh yeah, just because people have told me there's been some weird shit on there, but I think it was my nationality. They said, what did they say I was? I think at one time they had said I was African American, and I can't remember what the other one was. But it was just something completely not true.
Well,
something out of
It seems a team alpha male affliction because TJ Dillashaw's in a lot of articles now known as the Viper, and he's never been the Viper. And then apparently you've been African American. So what's going on here?
Someone is jumping on.
I don't know who's running all these things, but it's pretty cool.
Yeah, someone's jumping on all your Wikipedia pages and just changing all the information to stuff people up in interviews. Now, Chad, what's your most prized possession?
My Challenger, I'd say. She's my baby.
You Challenger the car.
Challenger.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And finally, Chad, how do you plan on beating Ricardo Lamas? What's the official prediction?
KO, baby.
Well, there you go. You can't go past that, guys. You can follow Chad on Twitter at Chad Mendes. And when he's not hunting, he's getting ready for another huge fight. Chad, we're excited for this one. And best of luck in your training. We can't wait to see the fight.
Awesome. Thank you, guys. Thanks for letting me come on.
Awesome.
Appreciate it.
Hey guys, this is Frank Edgar, and you're listening to Submission Radio.
All right, guys, our next guest is a legend and icon in the sport of mixed martial arts and the winner of multiple UFC tournaments. He needs very little introduction. He is the one, the only, Royce Gracie, and he's back on Submission Radio. Royce, welcome back to the show. How are you?
Good, thank you. I'm in Hawaii. Of course I'm doing good.
No, and everyone in Hawaii is doing good. We're super jealous. I mean, we love Australia, but we're jealous. Well, tell us, what are you doing in Hawaii?
Well, I'm teaching. I just started. I did a couple classes in Oahu, and then I did a class over in Maui, and now I'm doing tomorrow afternoon. I'm teaching over here in Kauai.
Oh.
I just arrived in Kauai, so I'm sitting right in front of the beach, man, looking at the waves, coconut trees and waves.
That's a great name for an autobiography one day, Royce. Coconut trees and waves. Now, apart from globetrotting and obviously putting on great seminars, we were excited to see that you were a big part of the new Scorpion King film. Just wondering, how did you enjoy that whole experience? And does that mean we'll be seeing Royce Gracie in more movies in the future?
I'm trying to get into more movies now. I mean, for the longest time while I was fighting, it's hard to do movies and fight at the same time. I mean, I wasn't into that, but now that I'm not fighting anymore, and it was very challenging, actually. The fight scenes, the choreography, it was hard, man. I trying to memorize a couple of lines and trying to memorize because we were using swords and trying to memorize the fight scenes so I don't hurt anybody and don't swing it the wrong way with the sword. It was challenging.
Yeah, it's interesting. Obviously, you being a mixed martial artist and a fighter, you would think that it would come naturally. How hard was it for you to, act? What was the hardest part of acting in the movie?
Memorizing the fight, the whole fight scene, make sure that I didn't mess up on the choreography. It's I use my hands. I never use swords.
Yeah, that's true.
So that was different. Making sure that. I mean, Victor Webster was awesome. He was like, man, Royce, just go ahead and swing it, man. I got you. I'll block you. Don't worry. I was like, man, I don't know, man. I'm afraid that I'm going to somehow be the one that stabbed him.
Now, on the set of Scorpion King 4, what was it like? Because you obviously worked alongside Roy Nelson and Bigfoot Silva. Did it feel like you were in a fighter's locker room? Man,
it was fun, man. It was fun. The guys made it very fun. Every little break that we had, we were actually talking about strategy for fighting. It was good to have them around.
And another guy that was around, of course, was Lou Ferrigno, who's, of course, a famous bodybuilder, actor, and he played the Incredible Hulk in the TV show. What was it like working with Lou, and did you guys share any crazy stories?
Lou, Don Wilson was there, too. It was a good cast, man. I mean, I'm there. So I grew up watching Lou Ferrigno as the Hulk, and so I was asking questions, and he's asking me questions about fighting and my fighting career.
Yeah, absolutely. It must have been really exciting. Now, I want to talk to you about something else happened. One of the things happened late last year was that you became an ambassador for Bellator. Tell us what this is all about. What is it about the company that drew you to the role?
Man, they are new and upcoming. That's what attracts me to them. Plus, I know Scott Coker. Scott Coker is a friend of mine before there was Bellator involved. He's a martial artist, used to train karate. So, and I did a seminars for his group too before Bellator. And when he approached me, I was like, sure, man, let's help the Bellator grow worldwide. And he's like, man, there's nobody better than you to educate the crowd. And you're good at that, so are you on board? Of course, I had to call Dana White first, ask for permission, because UFC's my house, man.
Yeah.
I built that place, so.
And so in terms of being, the ambassador, because I remember when we used to go to UFC events, we used to see you in the crowd, interacting with fans and things like that. What exactly does the ambassador role entail? What are some of the things that you do in the role?
Same thing. I'm there for the crowd, do interviews for the show, help the people get aware of the fighters, the Bellator fighters, and the fighters and the show, and meet up with the sponsors. Maybe go to different countries. We're talking about now, maybe this year, go to different countries.
Absolutely. You have to get it down to Australia. And, you were you mentioned that you were obviously, one of the forefathers of the UFC during the first big boom. You mentioned how you're friends with Scott Coker. Do you believe that Bellator will have a similar big boom in 2015 with Scott as the president of the company?
He will. He's, I guess he got rid of the tournament format. Bellator before used to be like that, but now he's just doing by ranking, and better fighters are coming in, new fighters, young ones are coming in. So it's just a question of it takes time. It's not a process that's done overnight.
Yeah. You mentioned the tournament format. I wanted to ask you something, Royce. Oleg Taktarov, he obviously won one of the early UFC tournaments. He discussed in an interview that he believes that the true UFC died when the tournaments were abolished, because now there's more rules and there's rounds and things like that. What are your thoughts on the progression of MMA? And do you think it was harder when you were competing?
You can't fight like that anymore because it became a show. You see, they can't do a pay-per-view without time limit. It plus, without a time limit, without the weight division, it was illegal. It was only legal, not illegal. It was just only legal where there was no boxing commission. And once the boxing commission got involved, and to be able to grow, to make it bigger, they had to add the time limit. They had to add the weight divisions, the gloves. It's as close as you're going to get to a fighter, to a real fighter. Then it's better than ruining martial arts today. It's tournaments. Tournament like point system tournament. Like Taekwondo, for instance. Taekwondo wasn't built to score a point. It was built to hit and knock the person out.
Yeah.
But then the tournament, now they don't even have to really hit the opponent. If they get close enough, they score the point. Teaching the fighters how not to hit somebody. See, well, but then it's like people want to compete. No, people want to do martial art. They don't look for martial art because they're interested in competing. They look for martial art because they want to learn some kind of self-defense.
Absolutely, Royce. And, one question that I have to you is, with the popularization of MMA around the world, does it frustrate you sometimes when you see gyms trying to make money off martial arts, not really teaching the proper techniques and just focusing on the fitness rather than teaching students how to actually defend themselves? I think it happens quite a lot with striking a lot of popular gyms these days across the world.
Even with BJJ or any school, that's, for example, the BJJ school, the person doesn't walk in thinking, well, I want to learn BJJ so I can compete on ADCC. That's the no-gi biggest grappling tournament.
Oh yeah,
or
of course.
I'm going to sign up to learn BJJ, Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu, so I can compete in the boats of the Pan Ams. There's no such a thing. The person comes in because they heard that that's a self-defense style, that they saw me fighting, and they realized that, man, Royce fought some big guys, and he was able to defeat them and defend himself. I want to learn something like that. Excuse me. But then there's instructor who guide them into point system and teaching them how to score points and how to compete in tournaments. And yeah, it bothers me that the martial art in general are becoming not a martial art, but a martial sport.
Yeah, it's interesting. We see a lot of gyms here. You know, they say they do boxing, but it's more like boxercise. You know, I wanna move on. I want to talk about one of your historic fights. Last time on the show, we didn't get much of a chance to discuss it and dissect it. One fight where you couldn't really go for points. It was your fight in 2004 in K1 against Aki Bono. You know, tell us how did that fight come together, and what was that experience like for you?
Man, back then there was no time limit, no weight divisions. So Akibon is 6'8", 490 pounds, and they just thought it would be inches. Japan was famous for putting a lot of the fights on Pride, K1, and Dynamite, like David and Goliath style. So I never refused the opponent. So when they offered him, I said a lot of my trainers and a lot of people call me up. It's like, Royce, are you crazy? The guy's a sumo wrestler. How are you going to take him down, man? He gets paid not to fall to the ground. And you can't out-punch him. Are you out of your mind?
Now, Royce, a few things we want to talk to you about. We've got some fan questions. Before we go to the fan questions, one of the big things that Australians are excited for is your seminars. What can the Aussies expect from a Royce Gracie seminar?
Every seminar I try to do a little different. It's always based on self-defense. Gracie Jiu-Jitsu, art of self-defense. That's what my father created. The fighting, it was more like a quest to my family to find out that, okay, I can't teach something if I don't really put it to try. So I got to try against a different opponent that's bigger, stronger, that knows what he's doing, different style. So it was more like a quest to see if Gracie Jiu-Jitsu really worked. And once we prove it, and everybody now has to learn Gracie Jiu-Jitsu to fight, to defend themselves in a street fight situation or in a cage. I teach normally during the seminars. And by the way, I'm coming to Australia. I'll be there the first 2 weeks in March. I'll be all over Australia. I start in Newcastle with my cousin Angela and Luke. And then I'll go to Sydney, to Melbourne. So I'll be bouncing all over the place over there. But the seminars are normally self-defense. And then I show them how to defend yourself in a street fight situation.
Oh yeah, we're gonna be super excited to have you down in Australia, and for any Aussies here, definitely check it out. We'll be releasing details as obviously the seminars come closer. Now we're gonna cut to these fan questions. First one comes from Nightwolf Royce. Nightwolf wants to know: CM Punk is coming into MMA, having trained lots of Gracie BJJ. What do you think about CM Punk trying his hand in MMA, and have you had a chance to train him and help advance his grappling?
I haven't had a chance to train with him yet, but it's a controversial. Everybody's like, a lot of people are upset with him jumping from WWE to MMA. Man, MMA is for everybody. You want to try out? Go ahead. It's not if you're not ready, it's not gonna be a good way to make a living, because you're gonna get punched in the face for real. If he's going to be good or not, time will tell. He might be awesome at it, might be one of those talent guys. You see, with a little bit of training, he can go on and be good, be an add-on to the MMA shows. But if he's not ready, man, the guys are hitting you for real, man. They'll punch you in the face for real.
Yeah.
Now, Royce, the other...
But I'm in favor that anybody should try, but for you to try, you got to get ready.
Absolutely, and we're excited to see what happens when he gets in the octagon. Now, next fan question comes from Gracie Fan. Gracie Fan would like to know, what are your thoughts on John Jones testing positive for cocaine? Do you think there's a problem with recreational drugs in MMA?
Man, sometimes these guys forget it, that they are example for the crowd. So it's not just what they do, the fighting inside the cage, what they do outside the cage, the way they behave themselves. It's a lot of young kids looking up to him. You see, he's example for the new generation, for the new kids. So he should, you see, behave when you're example for the new kids.
Yeah, definitely.
I don't agree with any recreational drugs, you see, or any drugs. So it's but sometimes he's the champion. He loses consciousness of how important he is for the young kids, and that's not the kind of example that I want my son to be looking up to. A guy that's playing around, well, but that doesn't help. With a lot of people say, well, that's just recreational. There's nothing to do with the fighting business. It doesn't matter. It's still illegal. It's a drug. So.
Yeah, no, definitely can understand where you're coming from. We know your views on drugs, Royce. We've got a tap out round for you. It's just a bunch of fun questions, and you answer them with the first thing that comes to your mind. Are you ready, Royce?
Yes.
All right. Now, we know you're a great fighter, but when you're not teaching training, what's your favorite sport to play?
Working out, shooting.
Wow. Now, when
I love to. I mean, if I'm not training for a fight, I'm out running, man. I'm training anyways. That's what I do. I train anything. That's my favorite. I run, I lift, I swim, I go surf, I go to hike, climb. You see, or I'm gonna be on the range shooting.
And sorry, just to cut in, Dennis, with shooting, yeah, we saw some pictures on your Twitter of you shooting guns. What sort of guns do you shoot? Do you ever get like machine guns or anything like that? What does Royce Gracie shoot?
I teach a lot of law enforcement, a lot of Army. So every time I go teach those guys, man, they know I like to shoot. So they take me to the range, and I know my weapons. Anything. I shoot all the weapons, man. I love it. Machine guns to handguns to long rifles.
Wow. Royce Gracie is dangerous in every area. Now, fans have been asking us to ask you this question, Royce. Are you going to release an autobiography anytime soon? It's something that fans would love to read.
I'm actually talking to my manager about that. We are on the works. We are talking about me making a book about my life. We're more like an inspirational guy, 175 pounds, 175 pounds, come to America, create the UFC. I mean, not create, but fight in the UFC. My brother is the one that created the UFC and give me the opportunity to fight, and I fought. And today I'm the example, man, that the number one man fighter. Fought 4 fights in one night. Fought somebody 490 pounds when I'm 175. So I can accomplish anything.
Well, when you fought in the UFC, obviously you inspired a lot of people in, to take up jiu-jitsu. So hopefully, with this book, you can do the same thing. Now, you fought all over the world, Royce. What's your favorite place to fight?
It doesn't make a difference to me. It doesn't make a difference. A cage is a cage. The ring is a ring. It doesn't make a difference.
Royce, give us your prediction for Anderson Silva versus Nick Diaz. Who do you think wins and how?
It's going to be a very interesting fight. If Anderson if Anderson got his head in place, you see, he will beat Nick Diaz. But Nick Diaz, man, you can never count the kid out. The kid's super tough. The kid can strike, very good notion of distance, knows his grappling, very dangerous on the ground. So it's going to be a very interesting. I hope Anderson Silva got his head straight, man, got his head back in place. After coming out from 2 losses like he did, it sometimes he messes with you mentally. So
I'd say that's probably the biggest question heading into that fight. I got it. Just before we ask the last question, we read on your IMDb page, Royce, that you were a fight choreographer on Lethal Weapon. Is that true? And also, what did you think of the Mel Gibson triangle?
Actually, my brother was the one that was the choreographer for Lethal Weapon 1 and Lethal Weapon 3. And I was there with him, working out with him. I was helping him out. The fight scene in between Mel Gibson and
Gary Busey.
On the end, on the lawn. That was he did well. He learned well. My brother's a very good teacher.
Yes, it's one of the most popular triangles that people saw. And now, final question, Royce. What else can we expect from Royce Gracie in 2015? Obviously, we're excited that you're coming down to Australia, but what else is in the works for Royce Gracie in 2015?
man, travel all over the world. I want to go all over the world, teach, spread the word, man, spread what my father created. I want to, maybe another movie wouldn't be bad too. My manager's just talking to me about that. I'm in Hawaii right now, but a week ago I was talking to him before I came to Hawaii. We talked about the book. We talk about making a book, making maybe a movie, appearance in a movie. Once we make the book about the history of my life, then make a movie on that. Then I got to get somebody to play me, man, because I'm not that good looking anymore.
Maybe Denzel Washington could play Royce. That would be a good fit. But Royce, we're very excited to see what happens this year. Thank you for coming onto the show. Guys, Royce hits Australia in March with Legend Seminars. He's going to be in Brisbane on the 12th and Melbourne on the 6th of March. For more information, make sure to go to legendseminars.com. You can book through the website as well. And also make sure you jump on Twitter and follow Royce Gracie at Real Royce. A lot of great stuff on his Twitter, lots of inspirational stuff. Royce, it's always an honor having you on the program, and we can't wait to see you in Australian March.
Thank you, sir.
So there you have it, guys. The legend himself, Royce Gracie. There is only one. There can only be one original. We're happy to have him back on the show. We're happy to have all our guests, Royce Gracie, Chad Mendes, Seth Petruzelli, and of course, Jake Shields. But now it's time to talk about, obviously, the big fight that happened the past weekend, or actually the big series of fights. We're talking, of course, about UFC on Fox 14. We want to talk about some of the things that stood out about this card. Dennis, before we get into the fights and get in nice and deep, what did you think about the event in general? Where did this one rank on your scale? Did you enjoy it? Did you enjoy the night of fights?
Well, you know, out of silly hats, this definitely got 2.5 out of 5. Now, it was, look, I liked it. A lot of the times the UFC goes to Europe and I don't actually like the broadcast quality because it's very different, but this one had a big event feel to it. Actually felt a little bit like a pay-per-view to me. In a lot of parts of the event. The stadium looked magnificent. It was packed with Swedish fans. Yeah, I loved it. It had a big event feel to it. I really got a kick out of it, and they've got a really good attendance there as well. And I was just, you know, one of the things that really kind of dumbfounded me. And Casper, I'll need you to confirm this because I heard it, but it sounded so crazy to me that, you know, I need some confirmation on it. Is it true that by the time the Gustafsson and Johnson fought, it was like 3 a.m. or something?
Oh,
Sweden?
yeah. It was 4 in the morning, I think, when they fought.
That's unbelievable, isn't it? Like, with Australians, for the people that are listening in America and around the world, a lot of great listeners all across there. You know, our cards actually start early in the morning, so a lot of the cards start around 9 or 10. So you get a lot of Aussies there coming straight from the bars, or, you know, and sort of trying to stay awake in that regard. But yeah, being at a fight card around 4 in the morning, that's a big ask for a crowd. And that Swedish crowd, man, they were on for a lot of it. So a lot of respect coming from us, you know, to those fans over there. It seemed like just any normal night, just watching it here at home on the TV.
I think they were on for pretty much the whole card, and it's crazy when you think about the fact that, yeah, not only was it 4 in the morning, and I can't really tell you any event that's on at 4 in the morning, unless you're here in Melbourne, you go on a Revolver. 4 in the morning for a stadium that big, like you look at any concert, any fight, it's all pretty much prime time around 7 p.m. or 8 p.m. or whatever the case is. Not only was it that late, but they had an attendance of like 30,000 people. And here's another fun fact. By the time Anthony Rumble Johnson was making his entrance, people were still at the gate, still buying tickets. That is insane. They were basically guaranteed nothing more than 15 minutes of action. They were literally only going to come for the main event, and people were still buying tickets. So that is insane for something that late to have 30,000 people there. I can only imagine how Melbourne's going to do in November when we get our stadium show in Etihad Stadium. Yeah,
that's an interesting one. The late night cruisers rocking up at 4 in the morning. It's interesting because as a fan, I don't know how to approach going to an event like that. I'd have to schedule like a sneaky sleep in the afternoon. You almost have to train yourself to go to the fights as a fan just to stay awake. You know, it would be a crazy experience. But yeah, now what did you think, Cass, going into this one? What were your thoughts on the event?
And I was going to say, when you go in there at 4 in the morning, what's the attire? Do you wear pajamas? Like, do you dress regularly? Like, what's the go? Do you bring a thermos or like some hot cocoa or something?
You wear one of those old sleeping hats, and you have like one of those old candles. With a candle holder and a gown. I think that's the only attire you can purchase tickets. I think it's on the ticket in Sweden. You got to wear that.
Gown compulsory. No, look, I think this is an event that kind of snuck under the radar a little bit. Obviously, there was some really good names, some really big fights on there. Of course, Anthony Johnson and Alexander Gustafsson. As far as the promotion, I didn't see too much for it, obviously, because there's been so many events back to back, and you've got UFC 183, and you had all these other events. You had the Conor McGregor fight night. I thought it was a good event in general, especially the main card, some really good fights. There's some really interesting fights on the prelims. The first one that I want to talk about, this one kind of stole the show. Makwan Amirkhani versus Andy Ogle. 8-second knockout, flying knee, and this is coming from a guy whose main background is wrestling, and obviously Makwan. I feel like this guy not only stole the show during the actual prelims, but in the post-fight presser as well. Dennis, what did you think of this one?
You know, Gas, I didn't know much about Makwan going into this fight. Obviously, Ogle, he was in the Ultimate Fighter, and, a familiar face. He looked very determined going into this fight, but, Makwan, he is just a superstar in the works. I know that you and me were talking about the post-fight press conference and the performances he put on the mic after the fight, but that flying knee, that he threw, and I believe it landed on Ogle's body, it was just amazing. Afterwards, a few punches were thrown, not that many punches, and, Joe Rogan really went with this whole the fight being stopped early thing, but it's sort of not really fair to Makwan. He put on a really, really good performance. If the fight was stopped early or not, it may have been, it may have not been. I certainly don't think it's one of those ridiculous stoppages where it's just like unbelievably early. But yeah, he just put on an amazing performance. And the thing is, he was talking about after the fight how, he told his coach he's going to throw that knee, and, his coach told, go for it. If you want to do it, do it. He's just one of those guys that's, fun. He has a great amount of skill, and he's not afraid to jump in that octagon and really, go for it. And that's the kind of guys that you want in the ring, guys that aren't afraid to, do those crazy things and believe in themselves. He's like a mixture between John Jones and Brian Ebersol. He's one of those kind of guys. I'm very excited for him. I think the UFC may have found a potential star in Sweden or, in Europe in general. So it's great when one of these prelim cards happen and, sort of there's a bit of a potential star in the making. Well, what did you think about it?
Yeah, no, I thought it was awesome. The fact that he's got this wrestling background and he goes in there with a flying knee, and it wasn't something crazy. I remember Brock Lesnar used to do a lot of flying knees, and I think that's just because he was so excited to get out the gate. But with Makwan, he had reasoning behind it. He was saying how Andy Ogle always runs into the middle and then stops. And he asked one of his I think his main coach was like, don't do that, rely on your wrestling, this and that. And then he spoke to another coach, and he said, you know what, just do what you feel, do what feels right. So he went ahead and did the flying knee, and I really don't think it could have ended any better for him. He almost reminds me of, I don't want to say Conor McGregor for obvious reasons, but this guy, he seems very humble, but he's got that kind of like star quality about him. He's not someone that you would look at and think, oh yeah, boom, there's a star. But if you watch the post-fight presser, he didn't get all the questions, but anytime somebody asked him a question, the attention was on him. He was funny, everybody was laughing, and it seems very genuine. Like he doesn't recite promos or anything like that. What he says is just very natural and organic, and people love it. I think the more questions that people ask him, the more everybody else wanted to ask afterwards. There's a video of him out there eating an apple. There's like 20,000 comments on YouTube, so check that one out. As far as the little axe Andy Ogle goes, there's a bit of controversy with this stoppage, and Dana White thinks it was a good stoppage, which doesn't really look good for Andy Ogle because he's lost his last 4 in a row. He obviously lost to Cole Miller, Charles Oliveira, Maximo Blanco. Those are all established guys, and then in comes Makwan, a relatively unknown guy, and knocks him out in 8 seconds. So that's really tough, and that might be the last time we see Andy Ogle in the octagon.
Yeah, tough one for Ogle. Who knows? Maybe because he's a European fighter and, they're looking to put on all these cards in Europe in 2015, he might get one more chance. But, yeah, definitely not a good look for him. And who knows? Makwan could go on to be one of the big stars in the division. So a bit of a rough run for Andy with the matchups as well.
Yeah, and speaking of, Swedish guys that haven't had the best run, Akira Corassani versus Sam Sicilia, another tough outing for Akira Corassani. Afterwards, he was actually talking about possibly retiring. What did you think of this fight against Sam Sicilia, Dennis?
Oh man, Sam Cecilia has really grown over his last few fights. I'm just, bringing up his fights now, but going into this one, I'll be honest, I thought Akira was going to take it. Akira's a tough dude. He's a very, very dangerous opponent. Now I'm just looking at Sam's record, and he did have a loss against Cole Miller, a win against Aaron Phillips, and a loss against Casper. Katsunori.
Yeah, Katsunori Kikuno. Nailed it.
Katsunori Kikuno right now is just turning off the show. He's like, I've had enough of these guys. So he's an up and down guy, but he's got a lot of power in his strikes, and I just think he's coming into his own now. It was a huge win for him on the Fox stage. It was definitely one of those cards that everybody was watching, and I'm interested to check out the ratings for it. I'm pretty sure they'd be pretty good. A big push for Sam Cecilia, in the featherweight division as well, a division packed with giants and packed with guys who are, so many animals in that division. It's a big win for him again, especially with a guy like Akira. I'm interested to see what happens next with Sam. He's got the KO punch power, but I just want to see him go up against another tough opponent and display some more skill. I want to see how far he's really come along. But yeah, I was very, very impressed with Sam. A huge win for him. Cass, when you hear Sam Cecilia versus Akira Kurosani, are you like me? Do you give Akira the favor in this matchup?
To be honest, no, I don't, because his last fight was obviously against Max Holloway, and he got knocked out in that fight as well, and that was also in Stockholm, Sweden. So it's one of those things the UFC, I think a lot of the times they like, I'm not going to say to give the local guys an advantage, because obviously, we've seen it here in Australia, the last fight night, some Aussies won, but there was some definite, brutal losses to some of the local guys here as well. I didn't think that, the fact that they were going to be in Akira Kurosani's hometown was really going to give him any advantage. And obviously taking a shot from Max Holloway is one thing, but I thought Sam Cecilia, he had more knockout power. I think there was a good chance that was going to happen. It's not like it was the first time that Akira Kurosani has been knocked out. To be honest, most of his losses are knockouts. So I thought there was a very good chance that it was going to play out the way it did. And of course it did. And, it is really tough. And I think Akira Kurosani is in one of those sort of one of those crossroads in his life where he's got to make a decision about where he wants to go in the sport. And, this is 3 in a row. He's obviously lost to Dustin Poirier, Max Holloway, and Cecilia. And, he obviously got knocked out against Dustin Poirier as well. So 3 KOs in a row. That's going to make him, very tough to come back and fight for a title. I think he's an interesting guy. I think he's got a good personality. I like watching interviews with him. He's a cool guy, but I guess he's really got to reevaluate what he wants to do in the sport, because if it is to become a UFC champion, I think that's going to be very tough for him, and I don't know that that's necessarily going to happen. But if he's happy to be a guy that just, loves to fight and takes fights here and there, I don't know, maybe that would suit him better. But to be honest, with 3 losses in a row, who knows if the UFC will keep him around. I think his biggest chance to stay around will be the fact that he is obviously Swedish and has a Swedish background, and, with what happened with Gustafsson, they pretty much need all the Swedish drawing power they can get and all the Swedish stars that they can get.
Yeah, absolutely. A compliment sandwich from Casper there for Akira. I agree with you, man. It's just tough. 3 KO pretty much losses in a row. It's just tough on the brain. It's tough on the head. And, those effects, they last with you for your whole life. It also affects your confidence and your skills and who you are as a fighter. So, if he is sort of doubting whether or not there's a future for him in the cage, I'd be happy to see Akira sort of, move on from MMA and go on to another part of his life. I'm sure he's a talented cat. He always dresses nicely, wears nice hats. So I'm sure we don't know much about him, but he's probably got a lot of stuff going on in his life. And why not focus some of that attention into another field and become as successful as he was in MMA and something else? I mean, he looks like he's a young guy, only 32. I mean, the world's his oyster, but if he does choose to fight again, I'll sure as hell be watching. So interested to see what he chooses there. Now, Cass, the next big fight, and this one sort of snuck under the radar for me. It was one of those fights where when they're like, all right, up next, Ryan Bader and Phil Davis. I was like, oh yeah, they're fighting today. And you get all happy inside. Like it's a kinder surprise of a fight. And Ryan Bader versus Phil Davis, when you saw that this fight was coming up, what did your gut go with? Did you think Phil Davis was going to pull this one out? Or did you think Bader, he was back on a win streak? Did you think he was going to win it?
Yeah, look, Bader's looked good. I think with this new Ryan Bader that we're seeing, he's very focused and he seems like he's very much about sticking to his game plan, getting the win at any cost. And I think with Phil Davis, one thing about Phil is I think he's somewhat inconsistent. I think you have your good Phil and then you have your bad Phil. You had the guy that burst into the UFC and just, he beat Alexander Gustafsson and Tim Bosch and, Antonio Little Nog, and then he got destroyed by Rashad Evans. And then he versed Wagner Prado and Vinny Magalhaes, who, you know, are not exactly elite fighters. And then he had that win against Lyoto Machida, which I think was kind of, I think he lost, and then he got destroyed by Anthony Johnson. And then there was Glover Teixeira, who a lot of people thought that he was going to lose to and get destroyed. I remember when we interviewed Phil, everyone was like, oh, you know, terrible matchup, Glover's going to knock him out. And then, you know, he really out-wrestled him. So I thought, against Ryan Bader, who's another good wrestler, I don't know. I mean, it's really hard to say. I thought maybe the wrestling would negate it, but I thought maybe Phil Davis would have the advantage in the wrestling. And what we saw was pretty much the opposite. He didn't really have any advantages, didn't really get, I think he got Ryan Bader down like once. I was very, very impressed with Ryan Bader, especially in the first round. He came out guns blazing, threw a lot of leg kicks. His jab was looking crisp. He was really beating up Phil Davis. I think Phil took over a little bit in the second round. It wasn't the most exciting fight, but I got to admit, I really liked it. I felt like there was a lot of, it was like a string that was really tense. You felt like at any moment, something could happen, and because it was such a close fight, everything that these guys were doing was very key. You know, any big shot, any takedown, anything was basically going to swing the fight in their favor. So I actually really liked the fight. I think that Ryan Bader got the decision deservingly. Really, it's really, really bad for Phil Davis because, I mean, just not long ago, he was calling out John Jones, saying that he'll break him like a cookie and things like that. And after a loss to Anthony Johnson and now Ryan Bader, that sets him back big time. As far as Ryan Bader, I mean, it's a big win, Phil Davis. That's a big win, big name to have on your resume. At the same time, despite being on a 4-fight win streak, it's not exactly something that's going to get him up there for title contention. You know, if you're going to be fighting for the title, especially against John Jones, you really need to make a statement. You need to knock someone out or submit someone or just absolutely destroy someone, much like Anthony Rumble Johnson has been doing recently, for people to actually believe that, hey, this guy might beat a guy like John Jones. So despite, you know, seeing a really good Ryan Bader, I think, I don't know, maybe he just needs to get a little bit crazier in there, maybe mix it up. And I think he definitely needs a knockout or a really decisive win before he gets that title shot. What did you think, Dennis?
Yeah, you know, it was a very interesting fight. You know, you mentioned that it was pretty tense and the action was happening there. And, you know, I enjoyed the fight as well. You know, a lot of people didn't. A lot of people said they didn't think it was a very good fight. A lot of people thought it dragged on a little bit. The Swedish crowd, the Night Riders over there, you know, it was getting a bit late at night. They were giving him a few boos. But this fight for me, you know, a couple of things came to my mind. Number one is, you know, Phil Davis, you know, he likes to talk a lot of trash and obviously wanted to fight John Jones, and, you know, that's not going to happen anytime too soon. But one of the things that really alarmed me about Phil Davis was, you know, at times his striking just didn't look very good at all. You know, it was all about the timing. He had certain parts in the fight, especially near the end, where he threw some great combinations and mixed up his leg kicks with his punches, which I was impressed with. But a lot of it, his timing was just off. He just looked a bit lost and confused there. A lot of his striking just didn't look up to the level that it needs to be at if he was to fight a guy like John Jones, you know? And it's just, I guess that's just the constant thing with Phil Davis. He's a great wrestler, but he's just not an amazing striker. And this fight just didn't show off you know, his striking capacity. Now, he fought Anthony Johnson, and Anthony beat him, but, you know, he didn't finish him. So he's a tough guy. He can take a punch. He can do a lot of the things that, you know, a lot of the things that he needs to do to be a champion. But that's striking. And especially with a guy like John Jones as champion, I mean, it's just not up to the level that, you know, where he could, you know, challenge John Jones in any way on the feet. And, you know, make no mistake about it, he's not going to take John Jones really down in the fight. Most probably it will be a standing affair. And, you know, the Phil Davis that we saw against Ryan Bader, he would just get destroyed by John Jones. So, and here's the other problem, and you mentioned it as well. What do you do with Phil Davis? You know, he wins and then he loses. He's definitely, you know, going to have to put in a lot of work if he wants another title shot in the division. Now, the division sometimes runs out of people for John Jones to fight. So sure, after a couple of impressive wins, he could find himself against John Jones. But I guess the big thing for me was the progress. The progress in his striking just didn't happen fast enough for him, you know, to really challenge some of those really top guys like Johnson or John Jones for the title. Now, he had good wins. Well, he had wins against Glover Teixeira. He had wins against Lyoto Machida because it was an interesting matchup in the sense that Machida is a counter striker. But, you know, what I want to see from Phil Davis is I want to see that timing. I want to see that striking coming together nicely in his next fight. You know, it's just something that he really needs to focus on if he wants a future in the sport. I mean, he has He's really cemented himself in the UFC, but he's in a tough situation where he's going to become a gatekeeper soon if he doesn't focus on that aspect of his game. Cass, what do you think it is? Do you think it's Phil Davis focusing on his overall game and not giving his striking as much time as he should? Or do you think it's a mental thing? Do you think it's a pressure thing? Do you think, there's a different Phil Davis that shows up, and it depends, on what fight, what kind of Phil Davis shows up?
See, I don't know what Phil Davis does for training, so I'd love to get him back on the show and have a chat with him about it. I think the day that Phil Davis turns the corner and develops his striking, he's going to be an extremely dangerous light heavyweight, because he says that he's the best grappler in the division, and he probably is. He's probably one of the best grapplers, if not the best. He's certainly a great wrestler, but the thing is, if you don't have the great striking to set up that wrestling, if people don't respect his striking, they're not going to worry so much about it, and people will be able to focus on stuffing the takedown all day long without the worry of, oh, this guy might knock me out. I think it wouldn't surprise me if one day Phil Davis gets one of those knockouts where the person is so focused on the takedown and they don't have any respect for his striking. I think maybe his striking, isn't as bad as we may think, but it's just not dangerous enough to compete with the top tier, light heavyweights in the UFC. And it just seems like anytime you put Phil Davis against a top guy, he doesn't have the greatest success. I mean, you look at his record, he lost to Anthony Johnson. He beat Glover Teixeira, but then he lost to Ryan Bader. He arguably lost to Leonard Machida. He lost to Rashad Evans. So he does well in beating guys like the Tim Boschers, the Little Nogs, the Wagner Prados, the Vinny Magalhães. But with the top tier guys, he hasn't really fared that well. And the thing is, if you can't take Ryan Bader down, like you said, I don't see him taking John Jones down. I think in order to be dangerous, he needs to develop his striking. If he can't get that knockout power, then accuracy. He needs to be known as a dangerous striker. And once he is, boom, his game's going to change. He's going to be, a whole lot more dangerous. People are going to have to worry about, shit, this guy might take me down. He might knock me out or beat me up on the feet. And I think that's where the difference lied. Ryan Bader, great wrestler, much like Davis, but he had that knockout power, and he hasn't knocked out a guy in a while. But even against Anthony Perosh, he may not have knocked him out, but he put a savage beating on him. And I think the only reason why he didn't get the KO was because Anthony Perosh is so tough. So I think that was the main difference. If you look at those guys on paper, both great grapplers. Ryan Bader had the better striking and the better knockout power. So I wasn't really surprised with how this fight played out.
Yeah, and this is me shooting from the hip here. I don't know how Phil trains, but I'm guessing that in the practice room and when he's sparring with the guys over at Alliance, I'm sure he looks a lot better than he looks in the octagon. So I'm worried here, with Phil Davis. Is it a confidence thing? Is it a pressure thing? Is it something that maybe it's not just the training? Maybe a lot of really successful fighters like GSP and the likes of that, they like to go over there and they work on their mental game with a sports psychologist. So I don't know what it is for Phil to really activate, his potential in the striking game. One of the things for him is, it's a closing window. He can't just keep winning and then losing to a big guy over and over again. He's not always going to have those opportunities. So I'm interested to see what's going to happen with Phil now when he goes back to the drawing board and has a look at his skills and has a look at where he is in the division. Very interested to see how he comes back from this one. Now with Ryan Bader, Cass, you mentioned that he's been very dominant lately. He's really put on a great performance in a lot of his fights. When I watched him against Phil Davis, I definitely saw a big improvement in him. But what I was worried about for Ryan is when he does go against some of those top guys next, has he improved enough, to pick up the wins? One of the things I'm worried about with Ryan is, he's a very traditional boxer, and he does throw kicks, but I just don't feel like he mixes in those kicks as much as he should. He's very sort of traditional, and he's very predictable. And, there's a lot of dangerous animals in the division. How do you see, first of all, who do you give Ryan Bader next? Who do you think should be fighting him next? And do you think he wins that fight?
That's a really good question. I have some fights that I have set up in my mind for more the main event guys. I don't know who Ryan Bader would fight next. I will say, though, just to comment on his style, I think one of the things about why we're seeing such a more focused and game plan heavy Ryan Bader is because of the losses that he suffered. Obviously he got knocked out by Leonard Machida, got knocked out by Glover Teixeira. So I think, and even then you had Tito Ortiz. He didn't knock him out, but it was the shovel punch that set up that submission. So I think Ryan Bader's kind of conservative, you know, kind of like with GSP, how he got knocked out by Matt Serra, and then we saw a much more careful GSP. I think that's what we're seeing with Ryan Bader. So I don't think we're going to see him wilding out and going crazy anytime soon. I think with Ryan Bader, I don't know, maybe Rashad Evans, he needs to step up in competition. He's won 4 in a row now. He's been Anthony Perosh, Rafael Cavalcante, Owen St. Preux, and Phil Davis. Those are 4 pretty decent names to the resume. He needs a top 5 guy, in my opinion. Top 5, top 7 guy. So I don't know who they're gonna match him up against. I mean, you know, Owen St. Preux, he's another guy that's up there, but they already fought. I don't know. I don't know who's left and who's not booked. But he's definitely going to get a big step up in competition. Wouldn't surprise me if he's even main eventing a fight night next. Although I will say with his current style, he might be better suited to co-main event. Yeah,
totally. You know, I'm just having a look at the light heavyweight rankings on UFC.com right now. And, you know, obviously you've got John Jones there. I don't think they've updated him yet. You know, Gustafson's number 1, DC number 2, Johnson number 3, Evans number 4, Davis number 5, Teixeira number 6, Bader number 7. Then underneath him, you got OSP, Dan Henderson still in there. Jimmy Manuwa, Shogun's number 11. You know, Maldonado's there, number 13. It's very interesting. You know, the thing with Bader is, sorry to cut you off there, Cass, is he's fought a lot of guys already. You know, he's fought Rampage Jackson. He's fought Glover Teixeira, like you mentioned. He obviously fought OSP. He fought a lot of the guys in the division. It's very interesting what they're going to do with him next. It's just, you know, these matchups, guys like Rashad Evans, guys like Daniel Cormier, you know, maybe a rematch with Glover Teixeira, those kind of matchups, it's hard for me to see Ryan Bader win those fights. You know what I mean? And then if he does lose one of those fights, you know, where does he go from there? It's very tough because the division's packed with so many animals. You know, it's very tough to have a consistent record. And I'm just a little bit worried for Ryan Bader about his next matchup is all.
I actually didn't realize Phil Davis was ranked so highly, but if that's the case and he's just knocked off number 5, then he's going to have to get, you know, a real step up in competition. He's going to have to get either like a Rashad Evans or a Daniel Cormier, and I think, honestly, those guys are going to get someone else. So this is interesting. The next fight for Ryan Bader is probably going to determine a lot of those things. It wouldn't necessarily end up in a title shot, but it's going to be... I mean, it's if he versus one of those top 4 guys, it's like, well, Jesus, with a 5-fight win streak, you either give this guy a title shot or who else is he really going to verse? So I want to save my predictions for who's going to fight for a little bit later because I have some ideas of who the main event guys are going to fight. But let's talk about, before we talk about the main event, let's talk about Gegard Mousasi and Dan Henderson. What did you think of this fight, Dennis? Did you think the stoppage was early? Obviously, 1 minute and 10 seconds. Gegard Mousasi, he landed that punch to Dan Henderson's temple. Dan went down. What did you think of this fight?
Yeah, you know, it was stopped a little bit prematurely, but only because Mousasi was just sparing Dan Henderson, you know, a really serious beatdown when he was down up against the cage. I mean, it was just obvious. He pulled his punch because he just had too much respect for Henderson and just didn't want to give him any more brain damage or damage at all. You know, even when he got that cut, he told the ref, you know, check out the cut. He just didn't want Dan to get hurt. And, you know, that's the thing that I'm most worried about. When I see Dan Henderson in the ring now, I'm just scared about what's going to happen to him. I mean, it was good that the fight, in my opinion, was finished early before Dan could really get that substantial damage. I mean, Dan is his own man and he can fight if he wants to. But, you know, I'm of a solid opinion that I'd like to see him retire. I think he's done everything there is to do in the sport. And I just think it's unnecessary for him to sort of get in the ring with these guys. You know, obviously he's 44 years old. And when you're 44 years old, you can't fight these guys who are in their 20s and 30s in their prime, you know. It's very tough for Dan. You know, he was on TRT previously. There is no TRT anymore. It's very tough for the body, you know, to get used to stuff like that. And, you know, we've heard the rumors, Cass, you and me, about his knee injuries, about not being able to do a lot of stuff in practice like he used to. So, I mean, I know Dan loves the sport and it's absolutely his decision when he retires because he's a legend. And I'm not trying to make that decision for him. But personally, as a fan, I don't really want to see Dan fight again. You know, I think he's done what he's done in the division. He's been amazing. He's got wins over Fedor and just some of the biggest, baddest fighters out there. He's been in every company there is to be in. I just don't want to see him fight anymore. The middleweight division is a very, very tough division. It's not like it used to be. There's so many animals there. And, you know, Gegard, he could have really, really messed Dan Henderson up. You know, he could have taken a few years off his life if he wanted to with that ground and pound, but he didn't. he chose to, just let the fight stop. He was a very respectful guy. And, I got a lot of respect for Gegard. He's had a couple of, tough losses. I mean, he had a tough loss previously, didn't he, Cass? Who did he lose against? He lost
to Jacare in his last fight.
And Jacare, one of the toughest guys. But Gegard, he is in a class of his own. He definitely showed that against Dan Henderson. But yeah, personally, I would not want to see Dan Henderson fight. What did you think of the fight, Cass? Did it play out the way that you thought?
Look, to be honest, I had Gegard winning this one leading up to the fight. I just thought, he's an amazing striker. He's got a great resume. He's been in there with a lot of guys. He's beaten Mark Hunt. I mean, that just goes to show you this guy will basically fight anyone at any time. He fought at light heavyweight, went down to middleweight. I just thought, Gegard's a really good striker. We saw what he did to Ilir Latifi. And I'm not saying Dan Henderson and Ilir Latifi's striking is similar, but I mean, that was with, I think, a torn ACL. I just thought striking-wise, Gegard would have the advantage, and I think he was too smart to fall victim to the H-bomb. Hendo's obviously big overhand right, and we did see Hendo throw it. It obviously missed. I think with the stoppage, it was a little bit premature, to be honest. I get the whole thing about Gegard was going to throw that punch, but to be honest, I don't think you can really look at things of what would happen. I'm a sort of person, it's like it either happens or it doesn't. Maybe he would have thrown the punch. Maybe he would have tripped and broken his ankle. You just never know. And I think with a guy like Dan Henderson, when you look at the Shogun Hua fight, I mean, that's a fight that people said, oh, that could have been stopped. And then guess what? He came back and he knocked out Shogun in highlight reel fashion. So I think with a guy like Dan Henderson, a veteran who can take punishment. And I'm not saying this in a way of like bloodlust or like, like hit him. But that the guy can take punishment and continue. I don't think anyone should take unnecessary punishment, but I think maybe one extra punch couldn't have, I think they should have waited a little bit longer. Like I said, prime example, Shogun Hua, him versus Shogun number 2. A lot of punishment, came back to win the fight. Looking at Dan Henderson's record, I mean, I can certainly see your point for him retiring, and I got to be honest with you, I agree. He's lost to Lyoto Machida, to Rashad Evans, to Vitor Belfort brutally, and to be honest, all 3 of those fights, I had the other guys winning. I picked the other guys against him. Then he had a big comeback against Shogun Hua, but even there, he didn't look amazing. Then he got absolutely ragdolled against Daniel Cormier. He now lost to Gegard Mousasi in the middleweight division, and if you see him going up against guys like Luke Rockhold, going up against guys like Jacare, even possibly another one against Lyoto Machida, Anderson Silva, Chris Weidman. I don't see him winning any of those fights, to be perfectly honest. And I have a lot of respect for Dan Henderson. I just think that, when he says that title shot was so close he can taste it, yeah, maybe in 2011, he had an amazing run. He had 3 knockouts in a row, Babalu Sobral, Rafael Cavalcante, Fedor Emelianenko, and then he had that crazy fight of the year against Mauricio Shogun Hua. But unfortunately, since then, the tide has turned, and Dan Henderson is very much in a downswing. And, like you said, he's held titles in almost every major organization. I mean, he technically did hold them in the UFC. Yeah, they were the Pride belts, but when he came in there, I'll take that back. He wasn't the UFC champion, but he was, the Pride champion. I think that means a lot. He was the champion in both divisions at the same time, the welterweight and the middleweight. So I think to be honest with you, Dan Henderson probably should retire. And just a fun fact, if you do go on Dan Henderson's Wikipedia, he did officially lose the fight with an RKO with punches.
It's just interesting what if he does have another fight, who they would give him, because I guess the last thing fans want to see is Dan Henderson losing against a guy that's not even really ranked in the division. I mean, you don't want to see him get beat up by just some up-and-comer in the division. And I mean, I guess the other fight that possibly the UFC might make now that they're doing their sort of exhibition fights is a fight between him and Quinton Rampage Jackson after he gets through Maldonado. I mean, maybe that's a safe fight to make for Rampage, considering that he's back, and it's an interesting fight that fans might want to see in an exhibition type style. But apart from that, yeah, I definitely think it's time for Dan to retire and enjoy life outside of MMA. I know he loves training and he loves his team, and he's got a great team behind him. So definitely interested in that. Now, Cass, the main event of the evening, Anthony Johnson versus Alexander Gustafsson. Again, we've mentioned it. It kind of went under the radar. Last year, this probably could have been a pay-per-view, and it probably would have been a better pay-per-view than a lot of the pay-per-views they had last year. This year, #the time is now. UFC is just putting on an amazing display of fights. They're treating the fans so well right now. I mean, just watching this card, I thought back to last year. Ryan Bader, Phil Davis, Masasi Henderson, all those fights could have been main events for fight nights last year, and that would have been the only sort of fight the fans really cared for. Now it's all on one card and for free before Anderson Silva fights Nick Diaz. So absolutely stoked with the way UFC is booking things, and hopefully the injury bug doesn't come back. But, when you heard about this matchup, in your heart of hearts, Casper, who did it lean to? Who did you think was going to have an advantage?
Man, I really didn't know. I kind of had a feeling Alexander Gustafsson might stand on the outside and pick him apart. And it's one of those things like Anthony Johnson, he looked really good, but it was one of those things where he didn't beat anyone really up there, really at the top of the division. And this is the fight I didn't have anything, against Anthony Johnson, but it was just one of those things where he was a bit unproven, and this is going to be the fight that was going to prove, is the hype for real, or is it a case of he beat some lesser guys? Like he's on an amazing win streak right now. He obviously went up against Andrei Arlovsky, had that crazy knockout against DJ Lindemann. Knocked out some guys in Titan and Extreme. He beat Mike Kyle. And it's like, Mike Kyle, he's a guy, like he's been in the sport for a long time, but he's not elite at all. He beat Phil Davis. That was extremely impressive. And then because obviously he was an underdog there. And then against Little Nog, it's like, okay, that was a brutal knockout. But then when you look at Little Nog coming back from, being inactive for so long, and let's be honest, the guy's been through so many wars, it was like, okay, here's Alexander Gustafsson. He's a real opponent, a real, genuine top guy. I just wasn't sure if he was going to live up to hype. Jesus, did he live up to the hype. Absolutely destroyed Gustafsson. If you look at the comparisons between, obviously, Alexander Gustafsson versus John Jones, John Jones being the champion, being the pound-for-pound greatest fighter, he couldn't put Alexander Gustafsson away after 5 rounds. That was a war. And Anthony Rumble Johnson came in and did it in 1 round, I think just over 2 minutes, literally hitting him to the point where his head looked like it was going to fall off his neck. That was insane. What did you think of this one, Dennis?
Anthony Johnson is very similar to John Jones in the sense that he's a genetic freak. I mean, this guy just has these genetics. It's just unbelievable. I'm just having a look at his record, and, usually he does lose to submissions. He's had a few submission losses, all rear naked chokes. But in terms of getting knocked out, I think he's got a chin like no other. I mean, he must have, metal in that jaw. The guy is he looks like the Terminator. He just comes forward, throws punches and kicks that look like bombs, absolute bombs. And yeah, he just looks superhuman doing it. I mean, I think, Gustafsson, I don't think he underestimated him, but as soon as he felt his power, I think Gustafsson realized he was in trouble. There was that punch that connected as soon as the fight came back. I believe, there was a break.
Overhand.
The overhand, that's right. And that really, really hit Gustafsson. And, he was on Queer Street there, sort of trying to regain his senses. And, Johnson, just such a great fighter. I know he's had his issues, obviously, outside the octagon. And it's great to see he was able to return, and put on performance like that. And Anthony Johnson, he gets a really bad rap. He's actually really seems like a really nice guy. He seems like a really respectful guy. He's gotten a bad rap about, some of the stuff that's happened outside the octagon, some of the stuff with him cutting weight and all that. But he looks like he's really matured. And yeah, I really want to see this fight with John Jones. I was a little bit disappointed because it means that Gustafsson's not going to be fighting Jones soon. But I think with a couple of wins, and because everybody wants to see that fight to happen, I think if Jones goes through Johnson or something like that happens, I'm pretty sure the UFC will, let Alex have another rematch with Jones after a couple of wins. So I don't think that's, I don't think that's off the table. I'm sure that Gustafsson can work his way back up there. But yeah, absolutely amazed with Anthony Johnson. And, it really got me thinking about what kind of fight it would be with him and John Jones. John really does pick people apart, but I think John will be maybe looking for a takedown, trying to submit Johnson, because on the feet, he is just an animal. And if he can close that distance with John Jones, much like DC did, and land some of those shots, I don't know how long Jones would be able to stay in there, because he just throws absolute bombs, and it's scary. He's a scary guy. He reminds me, you know what he is? He's the Mike Tyson of the light heavyweight division right now. That's who he is to me.
Yeah, I would agree with that. With that matchup, I don't know that John Jones would be able to take Anthony Rumble Johnson down, to be honest. I've heard rumors, and I think Rashad Evans is the one who said it, that since he's gone up to light heavyweight, not a single person has been able to take him down. He hasn't been taken down in training. So Having said that, right, trains with the Black Zillions, and let's be honest, I think the best wrestler there is Rashad Evans, unless I'm forgetting someone, and I hope I'm not.
And he's been injured for a long, long time, hasn't he?
Rashad
Evans.
Yeah. So, but look, I mean, hey, look, you know, the fact that he would train with a guy like Overeem who would be freakishly strong, and you know, if Overeem can't take him down, it's very interesting. And and on that topic, the interesting thing about John Jones versus Anthony Rumble Johnson is obviously that Anthony Rumble Johnson used to train with Alistair Overeem, or I should say Alistair Overeem used to train with the Black Zillions. They used to spar together, and obviously now Alistair Overeem is with John Jones. So John Jones can get a lot of insight from Alistair Overeem about Anthony Rumble Johnson's, you know, tactics and habits and things like that. I don't think that John Jones can necessarily take down Anthony Rumble Johnson. I know people will be surprised because they think, you know, he took down Daniel Cormier, an Olympian, and things like that. I think sometimes you just get surprised by some people's skills and fights don't go how you expect them. I don't think he'll be able to take him down. I think if anything, he'll be throwing a lot of shots to the body, a lot of kicks to the body, a lot of punches to the body to basically get Anthony Rumble Johnson tired. You know, he did have issues with cardio in the past. Now that was obviously when he was draining himself down to 170. When you see him now destroying guys like Alexander Gustafsson with so much power, so much strength, it is insane to think that the guy ever went down to 170. I feel like he was a big girl trying to fit into some jeans, and it's like, get out of there, big girl. You know you're never gonna fit into those jeans. It's just insane. He had so many issues. I remember he said something after a fight once, or he said something to the crowd about like how it was their privilege or their honor to watch him perform or something like that, and a lot of people booed. You know, he had those issues outside of the octagon. Feel like he's a completely changed man. You know, really cool guy. Really cool seeing him at the post-fight press conference. I can't wait to see this fight. I'm really excited. This is like Anthony Johnson version 3.0, and who would have thought? You know, a guy who had decent success in welterweight, completely blew it when he tried to go to middleweight, and now destroying guys. A guy like Alexander Gustafsson, the clear-cut number one. I want to also talk about some upcoming some possibilities for fights. I think now that you're either going to see Alexander Gustafsson versus Daniel Cormier or Alexander Gustafsson versus Glover Teixeira. And I'm going to lean towards Gustafsson versus Cormier. They're both coming off losses, and I think that's a fight that a lot of people wanted to see. And with the UFC eliminating contenders like they do, they always seem to put the top two guys against each other, like we saw with Gustafsson and Rumble Johnson. That either one of them could have gotten a title shot with another win. No, instead they put them against each other. I think we're going to see Gustafsson versus Cormier. Or we're going to see Gustafsson versus Teixeira and Cormier versus Rashad.
You know, and that's interesting because if they want to sort of eliminate future contenders, like you said, or rematches, then the Cormier versus Gustafsson fight would be the one that they make. But I think it would be so much smarter for him to go with this Rashad and Teixeira option instead. You know, like we were talking about, a couple of big wins for DC and Gustafsson. And, you know, knowing the landscape of the light heavyweight division, you know, they could be back in there sooner than later. And, you know, I'm not giving Anthony Johnson the nod over John Jones because he's such a great champion. I just can't, you know, say he's not the favorite after everything that he's done in the octagon. But imagine if Anthony Johnson beat John Jones. I mean, they probably have a rematch or something like that. But if they didn't, you know, I could totally see DC or, well, not Gustafsson because he got smashed. But I could totally see a lot of guys in the light heavyweight division rushing for that title shot against him. Nevertheless, very interesting. Very interesting. Anthony Johnson, only 30 years old, you know, looking amazing. And just a physical specimen. I mean, everything's just happening for the UFC in 2015 thus far. I don't want to jinx anything. I'm going to knock on wood right now, but so far so good. I'm happy with the way things are progressing.
Yeah, absolutely. Really excited about this MMA landscape in general. A lot of great things that could possibly happen. I think that's pretty much a wrap from us for another week. We're definitely going to be back next week with another big show. Huge thank you to our guests this week, Seth Petruzelli, Jake Shields, Royce Gracie, and of course Chad Money Mendes. Huge thank you to all of them. Before we go, Dennis, any last final words for the fans?
Yeah, if you could put all the best MMA fighters in the heavyweight division into a ring and do a Royal Rumble with them, the way the WWE is going to have on Monday, who do you think would be in the ring last? Who do you think would throw everybody over the rope? Let us know. Put it in the comment section below. And also give us your prediction for Anthony Johnson versus John Jones. Do you think he could dethrone the champ? And how? Put it in the comment section below. We love getting your comments. We love getting your feedback. Jump on Twitter at Submission AUS. Give us a follow. We love having a chat to the fans. And check us out on YouTube, youtube.com/Submission Radio AU. Lots of fun clips there. An interview with Bill Goldberg, pro wrestling star now in the Muay Thai world. And also Pat Miletich breaks down why he thinks GSP would beat Robbie Lawler in a match. So, I mean, would lose to Robbie in a match. Sorry, it's been a long day. Check that out. And, you know, another legend interview that we have on the channel. Love interviewing these legends, Cass. You know, Royce again this week. It's just such a privilege getting these guys on the show.
Happy Australia Day, everybody. We'll see you next week.